Biggest jerk move caught in real life. Petty acts of revenge, selfishness, and more. My aunt racked up about 60 grand in credit card debt and couldn't declare bankruptcy because my uncle would lose his job over that. The jerk move was that she called my grandmother ignorant and uneducated for not changing her will and cutting out other family members to cover my aunt's reckless debt. First off, you shouldn't be waiting for someone's death to fix your mistakes. And the reason my grandmother doesn't have an education is because she spent her teen years at a rather famous Third Reich camp for Jewish people. My good buddy's wife is famous for her lack of tact and general awfulness. Their little girl is about 2 years older than mine. Her birthday was coming up, and my daughter, 7 at the time, wanted to pick out the birthday gift. She plays with my friend's daughter and has a good idea of what she likes. She made a long list and carefully selected what she thought was perfect. Fast forward to the day of the party. Buddy's daughter opens up my daughter's gift and her eyes light up and she squeals, "Thank you!" Then my buddy's wife crashes in, "Oh honey, Granny got you one of those already. Go ahead and put that one in the Goodwill box." My daughter was crushed. It took all of my strength not to get up and slap the ever-loving crap out of my buddy's wife. 6 months later, we drew names for Christmas gifts for the kiddos. Buddy drew my daughter, and his wife forgot to buy a gift for her and didn't realize until we were passing out gifts. I don't speak to them anymore. The biggest jerk move I've ever witnessed was at my friend's birthday party, around 10 years old. His grandmother sent 10 $1 scratchies in the mail. The jerk move being that she'd checked all of the scratchies before sending them in case one had a big payout. I got to see his face drop as he opened the envelope to find 10 pre-scratched, worthless scratchies. Please tell me that she was on an ever-descending path of senility and truly did not understand the reason why people give scratch-off lottery tickets as gifts. A friend of mine worked on a cruise ship as an entertainer for 6 months. She didn't need that much money on the ship, but kept an apartment back in Germany with the landlord getting regular standing money orders. When she came back home from her trip, she couldn't get her door open. She called the landlord and he told her he'd already thrown out all of her stuff because after 1 month of her cruise, she hadn't paid the rent. Turns out her parents, who had access to her bank account in case of emergency, took all of the considerable income she had stored away to pay their own bills because their own money had gone into 2 new cars. So basically, she sat there without an apartment, without any friends in town, totally jet-lagged, and without a single euro in her pockets. It still makes me mad. Hey, I thought it was meant to be drop-out kids who did this kind of thing to their doting, trusting parents, not the other way round. This is the world gone topsy-turvy. Also, the fact that they just said bugger all and left their child stranded is truly just another level of callousness. Not even a self-righteous excuse to be seen. My ex-mother-in-law gave my 3 kids gifts that they loved at Christmas when they were small. Then, 2 days later, she came back to the house, packed everything she got them into bags, and took it all back to the stores because she was, quote, broke. True story. This woman was insane and did small jerkish things all the time. This one really took the cake, though. The poor kids were having fun with the toys and wearing the clothes she gave them, and she just took it all back. And yes, I know for a fact she wasn't broke. I was broke as hell, and my kids got gifts from me and the other family. I couldn't afford to pay her for her gifts, and I would have if I could have. This woman is an awful human being. She lies, cheats, and steals her way through life. She's not worked in over 15 years. She pretends to be injured in accidents she causes and sues multiple people for injuries. She wins often enough to live very comfortably off these lawsuits. Please note that long before I knew her son, she was unstable. She'd sue people for injuries that happened at their homes, places of business, and in vehicular accidents. She was, I believe, bipolar as well and was addicted to pain meds and antidepressants. I found this all out over the course of my relationship with her son. I began dating her son, and 3 years into the relationship, we had a son. Up until this point, her involvement in our life was basically non-existent, just visits on the holidays and stuff. I fed him naturally, making her unable to take him on overnight visits. This, of course, enraged her. She began doing things like calling Child Protective Services because I was, quote, feeding her grandson and turning him into a sissy and scarring him for life. She continues to lie, cheat, and steal her way through life, destroying everyone and everything in her path. This happened to a coworker of mine. My coworker had a son unfortunately pass away. He got him cremated and had a vase in his house with pictures and stuff. One day while he was breaking up with his wife, now ex, he came home from work and the ashes were gone. He still has no idea where they are 5 years later. He assumes she threw them out. It was his child from a previous marriage, not this ex's, by the way. A few years ago, as I was graduating high school, my dad got incredibly sick and ended up in a coma. While he was in the hospital, I still lived at home, waiting to turn 18 to move out, but living with me was his new girlfriend, whom he'd moved in 2 weeks after my mum left. So I'm pretty upset because I thought my dad would die, and in the midst of that, his girlfriend was constantly calling me a liar and telling me she'd throw my stuff on the lawn because she doesn't want me there. Now, during this time, I was working full-time at a car dealership and I wasn't dating anyone. But I later found out that once my dad recovered, his girlfriend, and now wife, told him that I was bringing different men home every night and sleeping with them in his house, and that I didn't care enough to respect his house while he was gone. I never did that. I was almost never home because of work. So then, because of what she told him while he was in the hospital recovering, he took my house key from me and told me I wasn't welcome there anymore. I hope one day to get the courage to explain to him that I never did those things, but I know he won't believe me until he sees what she's really like for himself. So now I keep my distance, I moved an hour away so I know she won't be in my life, and I'm keeping everything separate for now. My sister borrowed a large sum of money from our retired mother with a promised payback plan. Never made a single payment. Mother is now down to her last buck, so we tried to get our sister to pay for at least some of the money she owes. A few months later, a check showed up at our mum's, made out to her for $0.00 and a comment on the bottom that said, "Get a job." And yes, I've cut all ties to my sister. My son is her only niece/nephew, and I've vowed that she'll never meet him. I have an amazing family of in-laws that are wonderful, so my son has fantastic aunts, uncles, and cousins without her being in his life. Plus, as she gets older, my sister becomes more racist, and my son, being adopted from a foreign country, isn't American, read white enough, to please my sister. I saw a little girl order something off a menu at a restaurant in Florida. When she was done ordering, her mum said, "You really messed up again. I trusted you this time. You want to get that tummy tuck surgery when you're 20? What's the matter with you? Waiter, just give us a few more minutes." My daughter was confused. The little girl wasn't that overweight, had to be about 10 years old, and now she was crying hysterically. The mother kept yelling at her to stop embarrassing her and making a scene. I'm a guy, was about 22 at the time, and I actually considered the consequences of a hearty slap. My dad once made a rocking horse for my niece. He carved it out of several pieces of wood, hand-braided the tail and mane out of rope that he painstakingly unwound, and hand-painted it. It was a beautiful toy that would have lasted for generations. One day, her father was too lazy to go out and chop wood, so he smashed it up and threw it on the fire. He'd always buy himself new clothes and force my sister and her kids to rely on handouts from the Christian Foundation, a local charity. He bought a frickin' lion and put a chicken wire fence up inside my niece's and nephew's bedroom, cutting it in half. There were 3 of them and a lion in one room, and they were separated by chicken wire. He also cut a hole in the bedroom wall so the lion could go outside in another fenced-in area. They eventually gave the lion to the local zoo after the idiot realized he couldn't feed it. My dad gave them a cheap car so that my sister could use it to get the kids around. The guy had his own, but he wouldn't let my sister use it. He needed money once, so he took the car and sold it as scrap. Got around $100 for it. I'm sorry, did you just say that he just casually bought a lion? How, what, why, and where? And my goodness, if you're going to keep a lion in your house, maybe in an unoccupied room, or your own room. I think this guy actually wanted his children to get eaten. Insanity. Just an all-round D-bag. Oh god, I've got a list a mile long about my dad. Okay, a bit of background. My father is a jerk. Not just a regular jerk, but a true C-word of a jerk. I'm sorry, that's the most eloquent way to put it. Instance number 1, my father lost custody of me and my brother to my grandfather because of unsanitary living conditions. Read, there was no running water or electricity at his house and he had no intention of getting either. He had a new wife who had 2 kids, Laura and Billy. They lived with my father full-time. We were, however, allowed to visit a couple of weeks at a time. During one of these instances fell Christmas. At the time, I was 5 or 6 and a bedwetter. I couldn't help it, but that didn't stop him from standing me in the corner for 10 hours at a time because he insisted I did it on purpose. Christmas Eve was one such occasion. During the day, my grandmother stopped by and I was given a break while she was visiting so that we'd look like a normal household and so that she didn't know anything else was up. She dropped off a bunch of gifts for me and my brother and left. Then back to the corner I went with a spray can balanced on my head and my arms out at my side so that if it fell I got cussed out for moving. I was dead tired by the time I went to bed and I didn't want to ruin Christmas for everyone by peeing in the bed again, so I forced myself to stay awake. I did fail at staying awake, but I awoke Christmas morning to find out that I didn't pee the bed. I was proud and I gathered with the rest of the kids by the tree to open gifts. They started handing out gifts to everyone, but nothing to me. I thought it was odd that Billy was getting similar gifts to my brother, including a couple of Transformer action figures that I'd been wanting. Then came the last gift under the tree, 6 inches tall by 4 inches wide by 2 inches thick, and it had my name on it. By this point, tears were already welling up in my eyes because I thought Santa hated me because I'd peed the bed. My dad and stepmom silenced all the kids and made them watch me open my gift. I was excited because I didn't think I was going to get anything and then I got a gift. So I tore it open and what was inside? A box similar to that used for lice medicine, but it was blue. I looked at it tentatively and then up at my dad and stepmom, who both had big smiles on. My brother had started crying, though I didn't understand why, and I opened the box and it was full of rocks. Then I cried and they told me it was because I chose to pee the bed on purpose. I later found out that he'd made my brother go and get the rocks and relabel all of the gifts my grandmother gave us for Billy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Instance number 2. Laura and Billy, my step-siblings if you recall, were both my parents' favorite kids. And as such, anything they said was taken with more merit and precedence than me or my brother. I was the black sheep of the family, even though I acted an angel and barely ever did anything wrong. The reason is because Laura and Billy would lie and steal from my dad and then blame it on me. Their mother knew what was going on because she'd have them steal from my dad to get her cigarettes and beer, and then every single time they'd put some change somewhere in my room, be it in some dirty clothes, under my mattress, in a drawer, and once they even put it in a book and then put the book on my dresser. My dad would call everyone into the living room and they'd immediately say, "Well, I saw Derek in your room." To which the immediate response was my denial, followed by a searching of my room by Laura and Billy, in which the one who hid it would find it. Then things would get pretty bad for me, to the point where my stepmom would actually feel guilty for a while and be nice for like a few hours. This went on for a solid year before she and the stepchildren abandoned my dad. I was 8 at the time, and they were 13 and 14, I believe. To this day, my father still believes I did all of those things, even though the theft miraculously stopped when they ditched him. If I ever meet them again, and the first thing out of their mouth isn't an apology, the beatdown will be biblical in proportions and I'll be arrested for battery. Instance number 3, after they left, my father was always in trouble with the law or the city over all the junk he had all over the place, all the electronics parts. It was so bad that some rooms in the house couldn't be walked through, and at one point we lived in a repair shop. There were always 3 or 4 projects he was working on, and he always needed help with something or another. So me and my brother had no life outside of school because there was something he always needed us to do. For the most part, this meant we did the projects while he watched TV, drank, and smoked cigars. He'd bring in transients and hobos with substance problems and use them for labor in return for somewhere to stay. And sometimes he'd put them in our rooms. A couple had mental problems and scared us to death. Now, on the light side of all the junking, I learned a lot about electronics and can repair just about anything that plugs in or turns on now. Otherwise, it was like growing up in a junkyard that you had to climb over. Instance number 4, my grandfather died in '94. He left everything to me and my brother. My father refused to accept the fact that he'd made his own father despise him so much that he'd leave him with nothing, for reasons that should be obvious by now. So my father did everything he could to attempt to steal the inheritance. Here's a few. First, he tried to sue the lawyers for malpractice for taking advantage of an old man to get my dad off the will. Then he tried to have me diagnosed with a disability because of ADHD and severe autism so that he could gain power of attorney over my inheritance and collect a check from the government to boot. I aced all of my examinations for this and I was given an IQ score of 131, which got me in a lot of trouble with him in the meantime. He then went in the court, got the original will and made a photocopy of it and put the photocopy of it back in the court record, then 3 months later went into the courthouse and acted surprised that the copy on record was not the original, but a copy, thereby having it voided. Little did he know that there was a handwritten draft in the attorney's possession which took effect, and is now under lock and key with the clerk of the court, and he's allowed nowhere near it despite several attempts to gain access. And instance number 5, tried to sue my tennis coach for mental distress for giving me a ride to the bus station to get the F away from him. In short, mother F my dad. F him with a 100 grit sandpaper-covered baseball bat, and then give him an enema with a 60% capsaicin, 40% alcohol solution, and then shove a Molotov cocktail up there for good measure, and kick him in the groin to break the bottle and blow him up. You know, although I'm loath to deal out judgment on this channel, insert a Family Guy-style montage of every time I've judged someone, your dad might actually be one of the few people on the planet who genuinely deserves the punishment you've just described. And I had to cut out some stuff for brevity, and because some of it was too horrible to put on here. So screw that guy. I have 3 sisters, all older. 2 of them are fraternal twins, and they're perhaps the most materialistic and self-important people I've ever had the misfortune to encounter in my life. Twin number 1 was the first to get married right after she finished college. My mother generously gave her a wedding gift of $5,000. This was no small feat given that my dad had died about 4 or 5 years earlier, and my mother was not only raising me, but also helping put the 3 girls through college. Eldest sister, not a twin, was the second to get married, a few years after the first. Again, my mother ponied up the $5,000 as a gift. Twin number 2, now in her late 40s, has never been married. Not for lack of being asked. She's had 2 proposals that I'm aware of, but she turned both of them down. The first one wanted to move to the boondocks, in her words, and twin number 2 wanted nothing to do with that. The second had some issues with bipolarism. Shortly after eldest sister was married, twin number 2 went to my mother and requested her $5,000. Her rationale was that the other 2 girls each got $5,000, so she's entitled too. And because of inflation, her $5,000 will be worth less than their $5,000, so she should get it now in order to enjoy similar spending power. I was off on this one. Twin number 2 wanted my mother to give her the $5,000 to put into an interest-bearing account so that if and when twin number 2 got married, she'd have the equivalent buying power. Oh, and twin number 2 also told my mother that she wanted to see her will so that she knew what she'd be getting when my mother passed away. Twin number 2, who was then and is now an attorney, offered, out of the kindness of her heart, I assume, to review the will and to make sure it's all in order. She'd even gone so far as to deliver a number of forms to my mother, including a power of attorney statement. Twin number 1 didn't want to see her will, but did support twin number 2's desire to see it. I'd like to emphasize several points here. First, my mother doesn't have a lot of money. She's solidly middle-class and has been retired for 6 years now. Her current car is a used car, she still lives in the same house I grew up in, and probably the most extravagant thing she's bought recently, as in about 4 years ago, is a 60-inch LCD television, mainly because she loves watching football. 2. My mother bought both twins' cars and paid for their insurance through high school, as well as paying 100% of room, board, and tuition at their colleges. And 3. I'm happy to say that my mother told both twins to kiss her butt. My grandmother had a few gold watches, and she was really proud of them. She got them from the mayor or something at some point in her life, and they were worth a fair amount of money. My cousin, who was a bit closer to my grandma than me, I live far away from them, told my grandma that she really wanted to have one of the golden watches, so my grandma gave it to her and to her sister. Not long after, I found out that my cousin went straight to the jeweler's to sell the watch. My grandma passed away a few months later. My sister was pretty upset because she would have liked the watch as a memento. It wouldn't have mattered if my cousin kept it as such, but she didn't. She sold it right away. We would have gladly paid her the few hundred that she got for them at the jeweler's. My granddad, Grandma's husband, had spent half his life collecting stamps. After my grandma passed away, he was really depressed and didn't see the point in anything anymore. He told my uncle that he didn't want to collect stamps anymore and gave him the collection. My uncle put it on eBay straight away and sold it for like €5,000 a few days after. To put this into perspective, my granddad also called up my mother and told her to take the cat, and then called up a week later saying he wanted him back. He was in a really bad place after losing his wife of 55 years, something anyone with half a brain should frickin' understand. It was his life's work, goddammit. My uncles keep pressuring my grandpa now to give them the money he had saved up. My grandfather finally gave up and gave everyone in his family money a few months ago. I didn't want it because I know that he's being pressured about it by my uncles, and he should be allowed to live his final days without stress. I couldn't find a way to tell him, though. If I give him the money back, he'd take it the wrong way, and I don't want to upset him further. It's in my savings account. I don't know what to do with it. In short, one side of my family is only after the money and don't give a crap about my dying grandparents' feelings. The best thing you can do is use that money to visit your grandpa regularly. He'd like that better than all the money in the world if you're as nice a person as I gather from your account. My father asked my mother for a divorce on my birthday. took everything they had in their home, and started dating a 20-year-old. I took out a $6,000 loan to refurnish a house I started renting with my mother, one I couldn't afford on my own. My mother died 2 months after moving in, and in her final email, she told my father to give me the life insurance so I can pay the loan back and hopefully pay most of the rest of the lease. And my dad took off with it, bought a truck and a stereo, which left me broke, in debt, in a lease I couldn't afford, and with a little brother to take care of and get the rest of the way through high school. My parents also owed the school $2,000 that the school demanded from me, or else they'd not let my brother graduate. Jerk.
Parents of Reddit, what's the most absurd thing you found on your kid's social media? Not technically a parent, but an older sister. My little brother, when he was around 7-ish, had a search history of naked women and such. And when my mother found out and confronted him, he cried and was saying he just wanted to be like Jack from the Titanic by drawing naked women. And he had a few pages of his attempted drawings. Hey, maybe the kid's found his calling in art. We don't know. Was at my friend's place at around the age of 10 to 12 when my parent called me home randomly. I run in the front door and both my parents are sitting in the living room and immediately ask me to spell the word sex. I do, and then they tell me to send my brother over. My brother runs over and he'd be around 9 or 10 and doesn't come back. Turns out he searched for girls having sex but spelt it 6. These parents are over here trying to identify the digital handwriting. I found my stepdaughter's Musical.ly account. She had a bunch of poor attempts at sexy belly dancing to various Evanescence songs. She joined one of those Facebook groups. It was called Anything's an Adult Toy If You're Brave Enough. Pictures of my daughter, 11, posing quite harmlessly that went on to bum shots and short shorts. Someone pretending to be a 14-year-old girl asked her to do the shots for a modeling competition, and sent similar shots so she knew how to pose. She eventually stopped the conversation. The pics came through my iPad since the devices were linked. The police got involved and also CEOP. They originated from an account in South Africa, so Interpol took over the case and will probably never get an update. Instagram never even bothered to respond to my report. This happened to the 12-year-old daughter of a friend of mine recently. She also happened across it in much the same way and reported it to the police. They ended up having a huge investigation involved with the FBI, and the guy's now been sentenced to jail. My friend's daughter was one of the dozens he'd been soliciting. Keep an eye on your kids' social media, guys. You never know who's trying to contact them. I had a coworker bring her kid in during the summer so that she could run him to the local middle school for football practice when she took her break at 9. Since I was in training at the time, I was sitting with her at her desk and mine was not in use. To keep him occupied, I'd log into my computer and then she'd pull up YouTube so we could watch the Watch Me Whip song, because apparently kids will watch that for hours. Well, one day she goes over to check in on him and says in a confused voice, "Who the heck is Ed Gein?" So it turned out that it was still logged into my YouTube profile, where I had taken to watching documentaries about serial killers, and the kid had clicked on one of the recommended videos. Whoopsies. If she's really worried about what her kid's watching, then she should just create her own YouTube account. Personally, I have childlike parents. Weirdest thing so far was having to sit down and have a talk with my mother about how some things on Facebook are not real. My extended family lives in Houston, and during Hurricane Harvey, my mother was driving my elderly relatives to hysteria by emailing them horribly photoshopped pictures of Houston landmarks submerged under 50 feet of water, followed by, "It's a biblical flood! The world is ending! The news is lying to you! You're gonna die if you don't get in your car and drive out of town right now!" I talked to my stepdad and made him give me her password so I can shut down her account during the next natural disaster. Probably doing everyone in your family a favor. When I was 9 or 10, my buddy and I were on the family computer doing whatever 9 or 10-year-olds do. My friend told me to go to prettygirls.com. Seemed innocent enough, except it directed us to an adult site, and we immediately panicked and closed the browser. My mom really chewed us out when she found out. I tried to tell her we were just looking for pretty girls, but she wasn't having it. It was a long few weeks of computerless punishment. I don't know what it is, but I'm willing to bet it's something I disapprove of. My 15-year-old happily announces that he went viral because his comment amassed 1.5k likes on Reddit. "Well, what did you ask?" I asked him. "I forgot." "What's your Reddit name?" "I can't tell you." "Then why did you mention it?" With that comment having 3.5k likes itself, I'd like to think that the son saw it and got pretty jealous. that my 12-year-old son searched for pro study tips. No joke, my son, trying to study harder. Never in a million years and lives would I have expected this. When my twins were young, in elementary school, they were looking up The Simpsons and accidentally came across some adult Simpsons content. The computer was in the living room, so I heard them giggling and turned to see two guilty little faces. It was so hard not to laugh and so disturbing. What a conversation. The sight of Milhouse and Lisa is forever burned into my retinas. Looks like everything's coming up, Milhouse. When he was little, my brother once wanted to help us find a cool new purse to order for my mom's birthday. He did an image search for fun bags, and my parents had to answer a lot of questions. Not a parent, but my cousin one time got onto the computer when he was 11 or 12 or so and tried searching for indecent pictures of girls his own age. I was there when his stepdad checked through the browser history, and needless to say, he and my cousin had a chat about acceptable search terms. Yeah, that could have gotten really bad. They might be on a list now. Not social media, but I once caught both of my nieces playing an animated game online where the objective was to spank a cartoon butt with a paddle. Every time they'd swing the paddle at the butt, it would emit the sound of a woman moaning. They couldn't understand why the game was inappropriate, and were laughing hysterically while playing. Not a parent, but some of my students, 7th and 8th grade, asked to add me on Instagram. The worst username I've come across is BootyWarrior13. To be clear, I don't ever add anyone and my account is private. I never give them my handle because I don't want them to find me, but if they do, I decline the follow anyway. Usually the way I find out about their Instagram names is because they'll oftentimes want their peers to follow them, and they'll promote themselves by putting their username or handle on the board. I often joke though that I would add them on Facebook, to which I always get the reply, "Facebook is for old people," so that's fun. When I was 12, my dad found adult Dragon Ball Z content in my search history and proceeded to look through all of the pages while I hid in the bathroom pretending to take a poop. I remember him yelling my name and having to mentally prepare to deny everything. I'm scared to death to have kids and find their adult content searches. My girls are 8 and 10, and so far we've seen sucking boobies and Scooby-Doo sex. It's great. Parenting is great. Send help. Not my kid, but on Halloween I saw a post on my 17-year-old cousin's Snapchat that was a selfie caption verbatim, "Any girls trying to come over here and suck on this spooky thing and get festive with some pumpkin spice lattes?" I immediately facepalmed, then laughed my butt off for a solid 15 minutes. A friend from work's son goes to a fairly strict Catholic school. One day, I was walking out to my car and she was outside yelling on the phone and generally freaking out. I waited around. She usually has a lot of funny drama going on. She hangs up the phone, looks at me, starts hyperventilating, and then laughs hysterically. I was like, "Girl, what is going on?" She said her son's principal called her and her husband and that they need to come to the school immediately, that her son will fill her in on the rest. She continues to tell me that her son got caught looking at naked ladies on the internet, and the principal printed out his search history. He searched booby prawn and lady parts during class. She was yelling at her husband on the phone, telling him about the situation, and all he had to say was, "We should have taught him how to delete the history." I mean, the husband has the kid's best interests at heart, let's be honest here. When I was a little girl, I wanted to play some Barbie games or look at girl stuff, so I went to girls.com. Went downstairs to my mom crying in order to rat myself out. My little sister had something similar happen. She wanted to look at new bikes in order to decide what to ask Santa for. She went to dicks.com, hoping to see Dick's Sporting Goods. Instead, she saw a lot of schlong. Guess it runs in the family. Funny thing is, dicks.com actually takes you to Dick's Sporting Goods homepage now. Oh dear God. Reading this makes me realize how much my parents probably saw in my search history before I knew about incognito mode. Okay, it should be my parents telling this story, but here goes. So when I was a youngin' and just exploring the internet, I would usually go on Disney Channel to play games, but I wanted to find sites with fun girly stuff on them. So of course I just went to girls.com. Well, that took me right to an adult site, and my little self was like, Whoops, and closed it right away. Well, apparently my dad had been looking at the browser history and noticed. So my dad's interrogating my two older brothers, asking them who was looking at adult content. And of course they said it wasn't them. My dad was persistent with trying to get them to confess until I come down the stairs and confess that it was me. My brothers had the biggest sigh of relief. You're a good sister. I know many a sister would have counted that as a double win. Number 1 for not getting caught, and number 2 for getting your brothers in trouble. I found out my son is an urban explorer. He's 14 and I saw some of the videos of him and his friends sneaking into an old Air Force base and climbing on top of an air hangar. Yeah, just make sure he doesn't do anything really dangerous. One of my buddies was an urban explorer and I honestly don't know how he's not dead. He's climbed the top of spherical-shaped buildings, hopped on fast-moving trains, and other crazy stuff. This is another trend that I just find incredibly dangerous and stupid. Guys, please don't do stuff like this. It's not worth it just for some views. I was trying to figure out my niece's age, but it was too late to call my mom and ask. I remembered she had an Instagram account and I thought that might help me figure out how old she is. I looked her up. She has the standard tween Insta bio about what activities she likes and a list of 15 of her BFFs, immediately followed by pondering, and I quote, "Mostly, why do people hate me?" She's 12. She's definitely 12. In my 9-year-old son's Google history, I found, "Do girls in England poo blood for a month? Do you live in England? Because it's weirder if you don't." My 15-year-old dropping acid on Snapchat. So, not just bad choices, but we're raising a kid stupid enough that not only created video evidence, which was beyond dumb, but to keep it under my story. I checked my 11-year-old son's search history to find a number of interesting questions. Do men grow vaginas? Will my penis disappear when I'm 18? Will I become a girl? How do I save my penis? I asked him about his search history a couple days later, and he told me that some kids in school told him that when boys turn 18, they turn into girls and lose their penis. Those bastards. I hopped on my nephew's tablet and proceeded to pull up the internet browser. Immediately I was staring at a screenshot of an overweight, homeless-looking Santa knocking the cornhole out of a much younger Mrs. Claus. I immediately asked my nephew what kind of research he was doing with this Santa video, and his face turned fire engine red and he scurried back to his room. I'm sure he at least appreciates your discretion. This is kinda close. So I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. They both love to watch kids' YouTube. Mostly these annoying toy unwrapping videos. I don't know. Anyhow, the other day I was working on my computer and they were playing Play-Doh. My 2-year-old comes into the room and tells my wife, while I'm listening, "Mommy, I made this." My wife, "Oh, that's awesome." 2-year-old, "Do you like it? Let me know in the comments." My wife and I died. I think this might kind of say something about what we're exposing our kids to in this day and age, but we're not going to get into that right now. I recently discovered my 10-year-old son had been looking for inappropriate content, but his computer has parental controls, so he was trying to look it up on his Roblox game. My daughter was 6 at the time. She was supposed to be asleep and I go up to charge her Kindle and can't find it. I go to her room and quietly sneak in. I find her watching a video under a blanket. It's a popular mechanics video about how to build your own windmill. She had a mock model in the corner of the room she was working on. I definitely wasn't expecting that. This is definitely our most wholesome one so far. She's just enthusiastic about her project. My kids are too young for Twitter or Snapchat, but they love to watch YouTube. I started getting notifications a few months ago from people replying to my comments on conspiracy videos. I found out my son has a curiosity about flat earthers and doomsday preppers. That's kind of the scary side of everything. The kid doesn't know any better, he's just watching a video. And once you watch one, YouTube just starts to recommend more and more. They don't understand that the videos they're watching are conspiracy videos, and that the information in them might be less than accurate. When my son was 8, my wife was looking at his tablet and saw his comments on YouTube videos. Quite a few comments along the lines of, "You don't know what you're talking about, you..." and then a series of randomly strung together cuss words that normally wouldn't be used together. He'd get called out by others for the random cussing and he'd say, "I'm only 8, I can do what I want," followed by random string of cuss words. When we brought it up, he knew they were bad words, but was repeating other vulgar comments he saw from other comment trolls, and didn't fully understand the harshness of his words. Now his YouTube habits are monitored much more closely, and he hasn't done anything like that since. Hopefully you got on top of that one early enough that he's not going to turn into another kid telling me how he's going to screw my girlfriend on Fortnite. My daughters are grown up now, but when one of them was around 14 or 15, I opened up her MySpace page. She was telling all these kids that her mother, that would be me, was a raging alcoholic. She was telling them how I was neglectful and how I didn't like her. At the time, I was pregnant with twins, working full-time, and my husband was gone with the Marines a lot. I'm not a drinker at all. Obviously, we had a long talk. She was feeling left out with all the excitement over the babies. Still though, it was pretty hurtful. It took me a long time to get over that. I wouldn't take that one too personally. Your daughter was just looking for some attention. It's honestly kind of understandable. My younger brother thought that when you entered more searches, it would delete the ones before at some point. So I look on his iPad one day and see a search for boobs or something like that. The search after that was cheese, then cheese, and then cheese, and so on. So many cheeses. Wouldn't you have to start at the top where it was just a whole bunch of cheeses and then see it be less and less cheeses as you go down? So you'd be scrolling down through all of the cheeses and then get to the bottom and see boobs and be like, I see what he was trying to do. My significant other was looking something up on YouTube at her sister's place, and the search bar autofill defaulted to sexy girls with nipples you can see through their tops, but spelt horribly. My significant other's niece is 6. Needless to say, her parents were mortified and doubled down on the parental controls. When Twitter became popular, my son was about 5 or 6 years old. He came up with a way to tweet vocally. Throughout the day, he would say things like, "Going to play with my trains, tweet tweet," and "bacon for breakfast, tweet tweet." I was sad when he stopped doing it. When I was 11, my mom asked me one day about some Google searches on the family computer, including sexy Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. I blamed it on the babysitter and somehow convinced my brother to back me up. A couple years later, I was caught searching, "Can I see a picture of a girl in a bikini?" But I wasn't able to blame it on anyone this time around. I've since discovered the incognito tab. I think the incognito tab might be the secret hero behind this entire Reddit thread. My stepson is 7. I found a bunch of searches for Dominicans with no hands and feet, Dominicans with no heads, Dominican chests, Dominican torsos, Dominican legs, Dominicans in stores, Dominicans for sale, silver Dominicans, black Dominicans, white Dominicans. I was at a loss of how to bring it up to him. Thankfully, the next day we were in a clothing store and he asked me why Dominicans don't have hands or heads. Then why are there so many different colored Dominicans? I remembered the internet searches and became a little upset. I told him to be quiet because what he was saying could be taken offensively by Dominican people. He then got frustrated and loudly said, "Dominicans aren't people," as he pointed to a statue next to us. I breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Mannequins." I'm sure you still got a few looks in that store though. Not my kid, but my nephew. He was diligent upon receiving his phone to get Facebook installed along with an account. Last year, Halloween, I walked by him on his phone and glanced at a video of an explosion. Turns out, he liked a page of people blowing crap up. Not just any crap, but the actual crap that comes out of people. When confronted, he said he was shown the page from a friend who uploads videos there. You know, typically I would say your kid's gonna be friends with who he's gonna be friends with, but I think this is definitely one of those cases where you need to intervene. My son has autism, high functioning but still autistic. He's been mainstream for most of his schooling, and in 5th grade, one of the boys told the others how to search vagina and boobs on the computer. Well, my son in all of his autism glory was searching pugina, not vagina, and was only getting pictures of leaves. Poor kid. This was probably the early 2000s. Me and my buddy were off school for the summer and he would come hang out at my house. Occasionally, we'd look at adult content on the family computer. One day, my dad comes home from work and comes downstairs and says, "Hey, you guys missed the bus." I'm like, it's summer. There's no school. My dad responds, "The bang bus." Mother of God, we forgot to close the browser. I found a search for weight loss on my then 12-year-old search. Bothered the heck out of me as I've always tried to instill good body image, and she's by no means overweight. She was going through the baby fat stage. Started having conversations about the importance of being healthy and exercising, but to be comfortable with the body we have. She's since stretched out, but man, I looked for signs of starving and bulimia. Her mother was a bulimic, and I didn't want her to repeat that. We got my young daughter a tablet last Christmas. A couple days later, I went to look something up, and the search bar history had one entry. Is Santa Claus real? Well, that one kinda backfired, didn't it?
People who have been on reality TV shows, what's rigged and what's not. My friend was on What Not to Wear, and I was in the audience of people who were there to react when she came out from behind the curtain with her new look. She came out over and over again, but our cheering was never enthusiastic enough for the producers. After about 10 takes, we were screaming our heads off, totally hysterical, as if we'd just seen her rise from the dead. So that part was fake. I thought she just looked alright. Sob stories on singing shows. It's not the contestant's fault. I made it through a few rounds for a well-known singing show, and they beg you for a sob story. On my very first application form, I was asked about the most difficult moment in my life, what obstacles I'd overcome to be there, had I ever experienced bullying, etc. They pretty much make you tell them a sob story, so I wrote all about my heartbreak when I ran out of coffee. I have always thought there are far too many sob stories on those shows. My aunt and uncle were on Love It or List It. They had them record both endings, and the network chose which one they thought was best. They're still in the house, and they love it, but the show says they listed it. Already I don't know half of these shows, and I'm actually really excited to find out about obscure or weird reality game shows or something that I just don't know about. My cousin was on a Toronto dating show called Matchmaker many years ago. She said it was completely scripted, and she met her blind date before filming so the producers could go over the script with them. They were given a list of ridiculous and racy questions to ask each other and encouraged to make out if they actually liked each other or to cause a scene and be dramatic if they didn't really click. I mean, when you're thinking about all kinds of reality television that there are, dating shows are most definitely the most likely to be fake because, you know, if it's blind dating especially, like things can go wrong there. Really bad things can go wrong there. So it makes sense that they'd be like, hey, this is all fake. This is actually the guy that you're going to be meeting and stuff. My daughter and her boyfriend were on divorce court. They were not married, and the show's producers helped them tailor their story, which was completely made up. To be more interesting, they are now married, and since they've already been divorced, it should last forever. Some of my friends went on Cash Cab. One guy was chosen the day before and told to come with up to 4 friends to a certain spot the next afternoon. They met a producer who hailed the cab and were told they were going to a game show. They had to reshoot getting into the cab because my one friend said something like, "What are the chances we're on our way to another game show?" I have worked on several reality TV shows. Some are more fake than others, but they are all heavily scheduled and formatted, never spontaneous. I worked on a certain MTV dating show where one of the contestants tried to escape the house in the middle of the night, and one of the production assistants had to tackle him in the front yard and drag him back into the house. It's like prison. They are completely cut out from the outside world. No computer, books, phones, watches, and they are fed mostly booze. They all go insane. Also, if the show doesn't air, they don't win their prize money. This is a standard for all competition reality shows. I think I remember there being an episode of Big Brother or something, you know, back when it was like a new thing, I'm pretty sure, and they all had to like sit in a box or something for like the entire day. It was like the last person out the box wins the challenge, which, yeah, that does sound pretty ridiculous and just maddening. I have a friend who signed up to audition for a show that she thought was The Bachelorette, or something similar. I guess it's standard practice to not give the actual name of the show and just say, "We need good-looking, energetic young women for blah, blah, blah." So she got called back, went through a few different interviews and a screen test. Finally, they tell her that the concept is that she will be running a pawn shop with another woman. She is a dental assistant with no experience remotely related to the pawn business. Pawn Queens ended up being on for 2 seasons, and they gave her a backstory about how/why she got interested in the pawn business. Not exactly shocking, but it was pretty interesting to see that they basically looked for hot girls first, then put them into a proven concept, porn stars type reality show. A friend of mine was on Shark Tank recently. The episode hasn't aired yet, so we don't know how they will edit the story to be, but they did get an actual deal with actual money from Mr. Wonderful. My father is a dealer in a particular variety of memorabilia and also fairly well known as an authenticator of said memorabilia. He was on a show featuring storage units a few years ago. The show crew peppered a storage unit with some of my father's own collectibles. The hosts found them, then brought them back to my father to be appraised. He then offered to purchase his own items back from the hosts. Was on an episode of MTV Made. It wasn't super scripted, but certain things were added to make the kids look stupid. On our episode, the producers had socks stuffed inside a kid's drum to make them sound bad, even though the kid didn't actually do that. Stuff like that. But the script had room for ad-libs, and the show was fine with that as long as nobody said anything too crazy or suggested anything they couldn't deliver on. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids on the show go back to how they were before almost immediately after filming. People can totally be who they want to be, but why apply to the show? And also, it kinda sucks when the show drops a butt ton of money on you. Our episode involved paying for an appearance from Finger 11 when they were huge, and it ends up being a waste for everything other than getting a TV episode out of it. I was on a show geared towards preteens and teenagers that tried to imitate Fear Factor on YTV. They had us compete in various unique athletic competitions and other things. Most of it was surprisingly real. We actually did compete. Our scores were based on our performance in the task. The one thing that wasn't real was that the episode made it look like everything happened in a day, when in reality, it took about 5 days to film. Overall, it was a really cool experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. Hey, we got a nice one. A friend of mine worked as an art director on the American version of Super Nanny. She said pretty much everything was real, maybe editing together to make it a bit more dramatic, but the family interactions were genuine, and she said Jo Frost is a very sweet, warm woman who really does her best for the kids. I'm not sure if I prefer Super Nanny to be fake or not, because some of the children could be vile, and some of the parents, if I remember correctly, were kind of not very receptive to their children's needs either in some cases. Everything, every single thing is fake. I was on a cake competition show. The judges recorded 2 takes for every comment, 1 positive and 1 negative, so the editors could put it together however they wanted. They rolled the clock back an hour so everyone else could finish. We had over 3 months to plan our spontaneous cake. Oh yeah, and while we won by the judges' vote, a producer decided one of the other cakes would film better for the big reveal, so we didn't win even though we should have. I was on Restaurants Impossible a couple years ago. They say they have a $10,000 budget for the renovation. Definitely does not mean they use it. The host, Robert Irvine, was only there for like an hour a day of the 3-ish day venture just to get in the way and whine about things for the camera. They made up this whole story about how my boss would lose everything and cause so much stress on his marriage and family if the restaurant failed. They had us walk this direction with a sullen look to show that we felt underappreciated as employees. We had 4 employees actually walk out because of some of the comments Robert made. We also did not get paid any extra for any of this. But while all of that was annoying, I will say this. The Food Network did pay almost $4,000 for a very local construction crew to come in, which is awesome for local business and support. The food was very awesome, and I got to learn some insane techniques from the world-class chefs at the very start of my career. I am a chef myself now. It was a very neat, exciting thing for a small town and definitely brought our community together, and while the business did still end up failing a year and a half later, my boss was totally fine because he bought out another restaurant and is now a very successful person elsewhere. Kinda sucks that they feel they need to play up the drama aspect of it, but I think it's good that they at least are there to actually do some good in that case, which, a little bit of good, little bit of bad makes it more interesting. I was on an episode of Extreme Guide to Parenting. My mom is a hypnotherapist for a living, and so they interviewed my brothers and me about getting hypnotized to do chores and get good grades. They had us say things like, my mom using neuro-linguistic programming to make us do things, and that she hypnotizes us on a daily basis. I was 14 and I had to pretend that I had a crush on this boy, and my mom taught me how to hypnotize him to like me. All the parts with me in it were cut out, thank God, but my twin brothers got a decent amount of airtime. All of it was scripted. It was basically a publicity stunt on my mom's part to get more business, And I don't blame her. It worked pretty effectively, and we got a $5,000 check for letting them use our house to film. To clarify, everything my mom said was true to a degree, and she has hypnotized me in the past. But hypnotherapy is not what everyone thinks it is. It is a way of gaining more self-control, not less, and in no way is it someone controlling your mind. There are subtle cues you can give people to get them to agree with you, such as nodding your head when you ask for something and touching their shoulder, but other than that, it is mostly used to help people stop smoking or biting their nails and even improving concentration and avoiding panic attacks. Just like another therapist might help you, my mom does it with hypnosis. As for exploiting my brothers and me, it was really fun and I laughed a lot when I saw the final cut. I thought my family didn't seem so bad when compared to others that I saw in the same episode, but I can't judge. Either way, the whole plot was made up, but it is true that my mom taught us how to exit something called fight or flight mode when in non-life-threatening situations, like when you panic. She taught us to think clearly. Nothing as extreme as how they portrayed us in the show. Honestly, it's counterintuitive to make a show that puts my mom in a bad light for business reasons, and so while everything was scripted, she did maintain her usual air of professionalism. The directors just took all the parts that made her look as bad as possible. I'm genuinely enjoying this one because not only do I get a bit of insight as to what is actually fake in these TV shows, the entertainment factor, but also the utility factor, like with the Ultimate Chef Experience or whatever it was a couple stories ago. Diners, drive-ins, and dives. Kinda real. Maybe. 50-50. Friend owns a butcher shop and happens to be the supplier of meats to this restaurant where an episode of DDD was going to be filmed, and asked me to come along with him. We were part of the crowd scene where guys come around and ask other people things like, so how's the burger, etc. Thing is, not one of the people in the restaurant during that scene was a random restaurant customer. Everyone was a special invited guest of the restaurant owners. Once we arrived, the producer dude placed us in seats and they made a few people move tables and booths for a better overall crowd look, I presume. They gave us some preliminary instructions: make sure phones are off, don't ask for guys' autographs at all, don't pay attention to camera, etc. And then we waited and waited and waited. After maybe 45 minutes or so, the waitstaff just started bringing out food and placing it on tables. No one had ordered anything, but the staff just started bringing stuff out. Once a decent number of people had dishes at their table, the servers would continue bringing food out, but this time with camera peeps behind them filming them as they took plates to tables. They did some interview shots with people eating, and when I watched the episode, it was edited to look as if they were responding to something the guy had said to them, even though he wasn't around at all at this point. Shortly after that, Guy Fieri comes in and everyone applauds, and he just sort of waves his hand at everyone quickly, never smiles, and goes back to typing on his phone. Now, I had always thought Guy Fieri looked kinda douchey, but was probably a nice person. No absolute total diva douchebag the entire time, never acknowledged the crowd, barely acknowledged the production crew, just kinda seemed like a douche. Literally was standing right beside a booth where someone was sitting, and the lady sitting there said something to him like, hey, we love your show. Guy Fieri just kinda does this half smirk and smile thing and never acknowledges the lady or anyone at her booth. Only, and I mean only, when the video guy would say, action, would he try to turn on the charm and actually talk to crowds of people. Get excited and talk about the food and stuff. Later, after he filmed the restaurant scenes, they backed his Camaro out of a trailer and filmed all of the scenes where he's driving around. The crowd scenes were done at this point. My buddy and I were just hanging out and chatting with the owner and one of his managers. The restaurant kitchen scenes where they were going to film Guy and the chef prepping and making the food were filmed the day before, and the owner said it was the exact same thing. Zero interaction with Guy Fieri until the cameras were rolling. They even filmed some outtakes, which were somewhat pre-planned and set up in advance. Once the car scenes were all done, Guy Fieri heads back into the RV and we didn't see him again. The crew came around and did some other shots and interviewed some of the other staff and such. Overall, it was an interesting day. I have admittedly never had much of an opinion of Guy Fieri. Not surprising, ghost hunting shows are fake. What is surprising is how they do it. See those fancy instruments they carry that no one has ever heard of? They're actually remotes to each other. All you gotta do is split into two groups, and when one team is adjusting their settings, the other team is detecting ghosts. So simple, and you get twice the footage. Also, one time in a screening when the hunters were reviewing evidence, a producer whispered to me, see that ghost shape behind the door? Yeah, that's the sound guy. Wow. Now that's actually interesting to me and sounds kind of fun and makes ghost hunting shows, I don't know, kind of more entertaining. If anything, that's just a good idea to be like, yeah, we're gonna prank each other or something. Had a friend who worked on the goddamn Kardashians. They were filming a huge party. It was dead. No one doing anything. The producers asked if anyone had any ideas. Friends mentioned beer pong. Producers made him act like a guest and teach the mom to play to make the party look fun. Everything was fake. I heard from a tattoo artist that he had auditioned to be on Ink Master and met Kay Cutter, season 2, and he explained that to be a part of the show, they look for personality traits and flanderize the hell out of you to make a character that can create drama to the show. Kay Cutter did actually have a criminal record, so they used that to make him the bully of that season. The tattoo artist who I was talking with claimed Kay is actually a really cool and nice guy. I have never watched an episode of Ink Masters, and this is the first I'm hearing of a Kay Cutter. I worked on the Sing-Off and ABDC for several seasons in the contestant department. The performances and the performers were all real and really cool. I listened to the Street Corner rehearse Creep on stage one day and got goosebumps from how good they were. There are decisions made by producers to increase the market value of the show, like keeping a fourth group until the final round because they didn't want to lose a key demographic from the audience. The finale was always live and based on fan vote online, so that part was real. One season of ABDC, a contestant broke his leg. That was also sadly real as I was there to witness Call 911, the producers, and my manager. They were concerned about getting B-roll of him going into the ambulance. He was a really sweet kid. But these shows are exceptions in the industry, not the rule, and both have been cancelled. Went to a filming of American Ninja Warrior. They filmed all night with over 100 competitors, running the course back-to-back for around 7 hours. The only ones cheering like on the show were family members on sidelines. Everyone else was kind of quietly observing. It was impossible to figure out who would make the show and who ended up on the cutting room floor. After watching the actual show on air, even completing the course didn't guarantee that your run would be shown. Several got over the break, so-and-so made it to the end of the course, cue 2-second cut of button press. The best bet to making it on air, outside of their stable of famous ninjas, was to fail on the course in a way that nobody else had. That very last bit about failing in a way that nobody else has yet, it just feels too true in not only people, but also just life. My brother-in-law surprised our family a few years back by taking us out to dinner, and at that dinner he announced that he was taking an internship in Peru. Turns out he was on a major US reality show and had signed an NDA and couldn't tell us where he was really going. He ended up being a semi-finalist, going all the way to the finale. He said the parts that they make especially dramatic, the parts where contestants stand in front of the judges and explain themselves and then ultimately one is sent off of the show, could take hours to film, and that each of them would have their reaction filmed a handful of times with the producers standing right there on set acting as directors and coaches. He also said that the contestants were constantly supplied with booze of their choice and were encouraged to drink. He said people were under the influence of alcohol very frequently, but that it would never be evident as the cameraman would keep the drinks out of the shots. As far as the rigging of the results went, he said he was fairly certain that the producers were having the final say, but that the judges were included in the decision-making process. A friend of mine was on Cupcake Wars. His team actually came first. He said that the ingredients were partially random. The studio sent his team a list of 5 or so different ingredients that were potentials, and then 3 different themes. He had a plan for every single ingredient and theme if needed. Britain's Got Talent. There are several hidden rounds with producers before you get to the main stage with the judges. My cousin is a very talented musician and got to the last round before the auditions, but they said he didn't have the right image. They select the most watchable acts and usually try and avoid any act that's too professional in case they bow out and get a recording contract outside of the show's format. This is just concerning musicians at least, so not fake as such, but slanted. I know someone who went on Britain's Got Talent once, and I will simply say that they made a bit of a butt of themselves, but it was also kind of a mixture of their own decision making and the way that the scene was shot and edited. Undercover Boss is a joke. Everyone knows the show, everyone knows what's going on, everyone knows who the owner of the store is, and for those who don't, are a simple Google search away from knowing. I briefly appeared in an episode of Airport 24/7 Miami. My appearance was basically me doing my job the same way I would do without cameras rolling. The same was true of the stars of the show, since it wasn't like a traditional reality show where they needed to create a conflict. The airport does that organically. They got really lucky that some particularly noticeable events happened while they were filming, like when the fuel farm caught fire and exploded, or when 2 aircrafts collided on the taxiway. Everything they showed on the show actually happened, but editing did make some events seem more dramatic. Oh, is it bad that this subject is actually making me want to work on reality TV shows behind the scenes so I can laugh at the fact that a show is trying to manufacture conflict and whatnot? It just sounds so silly. Like something from a holy book where God, played by MTV, bursts into your life. And this Miami one was interesting because there's a day-to-day conflict going on there, but the MTV people just go, okay, you hate this guy, that guy hates that guy, you love this guy, and you hate that guy because she loves this guy. That kind of thing. And the thing is, I scarcely ever watch shows like this, but being on the inside, being behind the scenes and creating this stuff can be a harrowing but entertaining process. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I was on Love Island last year. It's a popular TV reality show in the UK. This year's is actually on at the moment. I guess people assume some is staged and rigged, but you have no idea how much. We were literally given scripts of arguments to have, things to say. You know when you see them having sex under the covers? Not happening. We would have to imitate this 5 to 10 times each, and the producers would choose the most realistic one. There is whole parts of the villa that you don't even see. Multiple camera rooms. Ever wondered how the islanders never clean, but it always gets cleaned? There is literally cleaners, waiters, etc. in the whole time. Only about 6 hours a day and night are filmed. There is a director there saying cut and everything. You know the £50,000 grand prize for the winner doesn't compare to the $75,000 we got for being in the villa. Regardless if we were there for 6 days or 6 weeks, when we got out, we had meetings and I had over 600 brands queuing up to work with me. Now I'm a nobody, and you wouldn't even recognize my name. Relationships aren't real. There is an agreement that is 100% for the show. Things are never how they seem. Also, we are shown the episodes every day. There is no will be cool to see what I look like on TV when I get out. There is also outside contact. That is just bullcrap. My jaw literally dropped on my 4th day when they showed us the show live on TV because of how different it was to reality. People with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once, also didn't get all of my vaccines, and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows and listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon, and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remembered being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I moved 1,000 kilometers to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like minus 30 degrees Celsius, and I have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat there for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills, being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing, to be honest. It was awful. I burnt my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me too: "God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to hell and I go to heaven because God takes good care of mothers." I am not exaggerating. This actually happened. Pretty sure I've said this before, at least in so many words, and I'll say it again. Fanaticism in anything is only going to lead you down a dark and horrible path that will surely lead to people absolutely hating you. And if they don't, it's probably because they're just as indoctrinated as you. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining about how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally, there was even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason of my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing other religions were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college, and my mom constantly worries that I'm going to convert. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents, so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion, I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them. Women weren't equal, and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only, or church-related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals, encourages friendships with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts and dresses, don't cut their hair, keep their hair in a tight, modest bun for church, or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside of the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like, youth groups was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I'm an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. For me, it was only my mom who was religious, Jehovah's Witness. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating, and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing and threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their love life was depressing too because lovemaking was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together, but I know they're struggling like they did when I was 5. When I was a kid, my best friend in the entire world actually was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't really understand it by any means, but they weren't that bad or anything. Like, you know, they were pretty normal. They just went to church and stuff and didn't do Christmas and stuff like that. I remember their family being a little dysfunctional, but so was mine, and that didn't really matter to me because, like I said, we were just best friends. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time, Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids, but the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up, I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and wasting my life away. When I first heard the word SX around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Hell, in every school I went to, my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the Spark Notes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young, I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishment. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. I later found out that the reason my father lashed out at me and called me these names was because he was fighting his own battles on these issues. He watched smut and hated himself for it. He lost his job. Not his fault. 2008 was hard for everyone. 2020 is no better. And felt inadequate. He was directing his own self-hatred at me. Now, both of us hate ourselves, and digging our way out seems impossible. From my mother's side, things were smooth. However, my father was using religion to abuse me. As a Muslim, we used to memorize the Quran. For me, I wasn't good at memorizing, so I spent 12 years, 3 hours a day trying. After all, I stopped trying and he kept shaming me for not completing it. During the 12 years, he was always comparing me with other kids, friends and cousins, which made me hate them as well. He would also use religion to abuse my mother, face covers and gloves and other crap. Not only that, he listens to music whenever he wants, but when he sees us listening to it, he starts yelling and shaming us. Extremists consider music as taboo. Life was hard for me when I'm close to him, so I moved away. I wouldn't call them extremists, but Pokemon, Harry Potter, MTG, and a lot of other stuff was banned. Pokemon because it promoted evolution over creationism, other stuff because of magic and demonic imagery, the list goes on. I missed out on a lot of cool stuff growing up. Then both my uncles came out as gay, and the whole religious bullcrap stopped soon after. Parents and I get along fine now, but I'm still kind of salty about some stuff. They confiscated my entire secret stash of MTG cards when they found them. I'm super atheist now, by the way. How insecure do you have to be with your ideology and just way of life if you feel like, I don't know, Pikachu could flush years of indoctrination down the toilet because your child plays Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or some crap? It's just so stupid. Same for religions that ban music. It's just pathetic at a certain point. My parents are still Muslim and I am still not an adult, so I am still in the process of having to live with them. You would guess that my father would be a little more open to the world after seeing his half-brother being happily married to a man. No, exactly the opposite. You are not allowed to be like him. He is going to the bad place. He is tainting the family's reputation. That is point one, forcing their child to be someone that they simply aren't. They want to force me and my brother to go back to Turkey. I do not want that at all. I was born and raised and I have lived in Germany for my whole life. Turkey is also really anti-LGBTQ+, something that would really endanger me. Having parents that think that mental illness in general do not exist and are results of demons entering the body to torment your soul is not a great thing. I am pretty sure that I have anxiety, depression, and maybe something more that I am not comfortable with sharing, but guess what? There is no such thing as anxiety or depression. You simply do not wish to follow my guidance. And they send me to the mosque to learn and read our Quran and to chase the demons away. I need a therapist since I was maybe 6 years old, but nobody listens. I am feeling like they are trying to take my identity away. I am someone who isn't comfortable with their body at all. I don't mean weight, I mean the gender they assign me at birth. But I know that I will never get the chance to live as who I am. Even my friends do not accept my wishes and still use the wrong pronouns and name. Guess I'll never get the chance to choose who I want to be and who I want to love. Like seriously, they picked who they want to marry themselves, but when I asked if I can choose my husband, I get a no? I am someone who would gladly cut them out from my life, but sadly I know what would happen. They would try more things to get me to stay, or would never leave me alone. My family thought my dad was murdered in Ecuador on a mission trip and that it was my fault. He was on a mission trip and would call us daily from the phone in town about a mile walk from where he stayed. We didn't get a call for 2 days and then got a voicemail from a hospital in Ecuador that was in Spanish and had bad reception. Around this time, I snuck a copy of Diablo home from a friend's house to install on my computer against my mother's commands. She was very religious and warned me about the evils of bringing sinful things into our home. Always said that doing so would invite devils into our home and our lives. Long story short, I lived in complete agony and regret for a week thinking I murdered my father, just to get a call from him when he landed in Texas saying they lost power to phones in town and he wasn't able to call home. This is just one of the many times I was messed up over our religious upbringing. My parents were pretty cool when it came to religion and raising me and my sister growing up. They were both Christians and I was taught all the stories and such, but we weren't churchgoers. It was exposure to my aunt and uncle and their family that really gave me a taste of religious fundamentalism. I moved from a heavily Catholic, though my immediate family weren't Catholic, small Texas town to Middle Tennessee where I turned 10. Not only did I really get my first taste of religious fundamentalism moving into the Bible Belt, but particularly the hardcore Baptist sect of it, the largest being the aforementioned aunt and uncle. Our families got along, but they would always pressure us into going to church with them, make buttholish comments about our parents raising us for hell and that we turn out to be bums and women of the night. Over the course of 13 years of living in Tennessee, I moved back to Texas a decade ago. Our families had more than one falling out. I'm grateful that I didn't live directly under the thumb of it, but between them and the overabundance of fundamentalism in rural Tennessee really turned me off religion entirely, and is a large reason of why I am so proud to be an atheist today. So congratulations to said aunt and uncle, you failed spectacularly. I was raised Mormon and I happen to also be gay. My father is nothing short of devout, very, very religious. I ended up feeling alone most of my teenage years, and at the time thought I would disappoint my parents so strongly I thought I would never survive the stress. So there's a lot of pressure to feel the spirit even at a young age. But there's a lot more age-based ceremonies, so you get a lot of attention specifically on yourself at a young age. 8. Baptism. My parents also gave me Mumi, First Bible/Book of Mormon. 12. Become a deacon, passing sacrament. 14. Become a teacher, preparing sacrament. 16. Becoming a priest, blessing sacrament. 18. Gaining the priesthood, the right to most of the authority and capabilities in the church. 19. Going on a mission. Anyway, I never felt anything, and once I started having gay urges, I freaked and repressed those emotions deep down. By the time I was 16, my faith was faltering, as so many of the teachings made no sense to me. I stopped going to the church, never got the priesthood, never went on mission, and my parents kept saying, it's just a phase. At 25, after another failed female relationship, she was incredible, I just had zero attraction to her. I finally came to terms with being gay. I had no idea how I would ever find the courage to tell them. I was so afraid they would shut me out and I would lose them forever. Especially my dad. Despite his strong religious background, he was always a very loving father. I love his company. When I was 27, I told my parents I actually had a boyfriend for a year and it was going well. My mom basically started becoming hysterical. My father, stone silent. My mom spouting facts about HIV. My dad's look of confusion and controlled poise was unnerving. It was a bumpy next couple of years for both of them, but my mom came around sooner. My dad took forever. I reminded myself it took me 13 years since puberty to accept this. I can give them time too. He started coming around since I got in a new relationship with my partner. My current partner of 4 years is incredible. He melts the stone hearts of both my parents. He's kind, anticipates the needs of everyone around him, and a joy to be around. My parents see how happy he makes me. My mom asked me recently, when are we getting married? My father hugs my partner with genuine love and appreciation. Being raised religious was very stressful. I felt alone for a long period in my life. Now I am living what I thought was not achievable. I opened up to my parents. They accept me for who I am. I accept them, and we're all happier than I ever could have hoped for. Sometimes you really need a story like this one just to lighten the mood a little bit, because I'm actually really happy for this dude. Was deathly terrified of who I was. I'm bi. My dad literally told me he would disown us if he found out we were gay. The funny thing is, we ended up disowning him. He was doing illegal substances behind our backs, and now he can't see his grandkids. Grew up with heavily religious parents, but my mom was way more immersed within it than the rest of my family. Christian. She wasn't as strict with me compared to my other siblings, but she basically forced the idea of church on all of us, and kinda drilled into our head that participating in worldly events will send you to hell. Sex before marriage? Hell. LGBTQ+ friends? Hell. Self-deletion? Hell. You get the gist of it. I felt guilty for feeling and thinking a lot of things I considered to be bad and would try to make up for it by praying. She was also the primary source for my horrid self-image issues. I was pretty overweight as a kid, and my mom has always been overweight, so hearing things like, you don't need to be eating that extra cookie, or you're way too big, or I definitely need to get you a trainer so you can be skinny like your friends, definitely crushed me on the inside. I did end up losing a lot of weight and evened out, so she never really comments on my body anymore. The whole deliverance plus tongues thing was scary to me as a child, and I never fully understood it. I tried so hard to feel the presence of God within me, but I never understood what everyone else was talking about. I never talked to God, and eventually I started questioning things when I was around 12 to 13. Anyways, fast forward to when I was around 15, I had realized how crappy organized religion was, and how inauthentic and hypocritical practical everyone is. I told my mom that I don't believe in God, and she pulled but God provided everything for you, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., etc. Like, no. I'm pretty sure you working your butt off day in and day out did that. A lot of times she also likes to go on the whole, if you don't follow in God's path, you'll just be a vehement sinner who will go to hell spiel. It's tiring and repetitive. She's still a Jesus freak, and I still don't agree with the church whatsoever, but most of the time I just go so she won't moan at me or threaten to take my car keys away, or some absurd thing like that. Nowadays, though, I have no interest in being part of the church or religion whatsoever, but every Sunday morning we go, I always have a toke session beforehand, LOL. I remember crying myself to sleep some nights because my friends celebrated Christmas, so I thought that meant they couldn't get into heaven. That is like really, really sad. Like the thought of every year that comes around, everyone's like excited for Christmas, and then this one kid is just like so upset that his friends aren't going to go to heaven with him. That's really sad. I lack sentiment in any form, and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head, and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies and I'm learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's frickin' hard. I'm gonna try and find one that isn't so sad. 1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat, and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-vegetarian on Sunday, Friday, and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. Yes, I'm Hindu. Yes, it doesn't sound so extreme, but I want to be a chef, so it does sound extreme from my point of view. No, I'm not going to get the hell out of this place because I still love my parents. My mother and father work very hard to ensure I get a proper education and food. Okay, maybe a little oppressive in some regards, but not that bad, not that bad. I honestly think that's the best tone we're gonna end on.
Teenage Redditors, what's the worst part of being a teenager these days? The pressure of being expected to go to a good college as you anxiously hear about student debt getting higher and higher. You kind of think it would be cool, but you're scared out of your mind of the prospect of being in debt for so many years after you graduate. At the same time as everyone's assuring you that if you don't go to college, you're a loser idiot who will work at McDonald's forever. Also, the idiotic technology stigma from older generations. I was reading a book on a Kindle for English in my French class, and she not only took it away from me, but yelled at me for texting during class. I tried to tell her that the thing was literally a slightly more advanced book, but she refused to believe me. On the same note, how online friends are considered not real because they're totally computer programs and not people on the other side of the monitor. My parents always tease me about not having many friends. When I do ask to go over to someone's house or vice versa, they say no. They want me to make friends without being with friends. Also, very high expectations suck. High expectations comes from every parent across every generation, I can promise you that. Having everyone ask what you want to do with your life. I don't even know what I want for breakfast. Everything is taken 20 times more serious. I got a 10-day suspension for a freaking box cutter in my car for work. I'm a straight A student with perfect behavior. My dad points out in front of the whole school board that in the 70s he had a shotgun in his car for hunting while he was at school. Yeah, times have changed. I would think a box cutter is being a little overly cautious though. Being treated like a child and then expecting us to act like adults and take on adult responsibilities the moment we turn 18. Again, generally applies to every generation. College educations cost more and mean less. Getting a degree is basically expected of us, and the great jobs that you're promised aren't always there when you're done. Storekeepers looking at you like you're about to steal something. Yeah, I remember those days. I'm expected to transition from my youth to an adult instantly. I need to have my career planned out, my college picked, and a job on the side while I still suck at doing many things like tying my shoe. I suck at it, I don't know why. It's so much pressure and I don't feel I have the maturity needed yet, but I need to fake it to make it. I'm gonna give you a pro tip here, buddy. Everyone's faking it. Nobody knows what they're doing. There are no real adults as you know them as kids. We're all just winging it. Everyone expects you to do something great. I feel so pressured sometimes. I once had a teacher tell me, "Oh, that's not a grade I expect to see from you. You need to do your best," even when I had honestly done my best. I just turned 20 and for a while I was really sad about it because I felt like I wasn't done being a teenager. This thread has confirmed for me that turning 20 really isn't that bad. It's just that most of my teenage life involved being too sick to really do much. A lot of time was also spent being ruled by depression and anxiety. The good parts of my teens were so good that it made me wonder how my teenage years could have gone if all the crappy stuff hadn't happened and I'd just been normal. But in the last week or so, I've definitely learned that being 20 is infinitely cooler than being 16, and that while my teenage circumstances weren't normal in the slightest, it is normal to have a crappy time being a teen. Parents. I have a tracker on my phone, and my parents flip and scream at me whenever I turn it off. Oh, and the sudden gravity of the world in my situation here. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard with parents having access to the technology that they do now. At the end of the day though, I will say 99% of parents are just trying to make sure that you're safe. School food is at an all-time low. To be fair, how would you know? We get put down by our elders for being wrong in some way because of the time frame in which we were born. So what if we don't have to walk 5 miles uphill every day to get to school? That doesn't mean I'm any less a contributing member of society than you are. To be fair, you're still in school, so not technically contributing to society yet, but I'm sure you'll do fine when you get there. How much stricter the laws become, and how easy it is to get into a lot of trouble. I hear all these stories from my dad and his friends, my uncles, friends' dads, and older cousins about all the things they did, and how sometimes they would get caught by the cops doing regular, stupid teenage stuff. Speeding, racing, drinking underage, paintballing in the streets, getting into fistfights, or getting caught with a little bit of pot. From what they told me, the cops seem a lot more relaxed, and let them off with warnings because they understood that teens do stupid things and try drugs and alcohol. I hear all of these situations and think if I ever did any of this and got caught, I would very likely get in a lot of trouble and possibly put in jail. It seems like no one remembers that the time to screw up and learn from stupid mistakes is when you're a teenager. As for high school, if I did half the things I hear they used to do in high school, I would be in jail. I will say, yes, cops handle things very differently nowadays, and I think a lot of that would come down to better training. They find a kid drinking underage and literally want to ruin their life. They seem to forget that they're here to help and protect society, not screw them over and make a quota. Way too much focus on grades rather than learning. This also causes way too much stress in school that is unhealthy and can create a terrible connection between the student and the joy of learning. Also, the college process. Screw the college process. I would argue now that learning is a lot more lenient and that there's a lot of different types of learning available to you now. Back in the day, if you didn't follow the specific curriculum that was assigned to you or you weren't able to keep up with it, too bad. Aspiring to be great or do something meaningful with your life, then realizing the system and society you were raised in will be the first thing to beat you and your ambitions down. Oh, this kid's already figured it out. Being expected to work for free to get experience, especially knowing not too long ago on-the-job training was paid and covered what college and internships do now. We've all seen the memes. Employers want 30 years of experience but no older than 20 and they're only going to pay you 3 cents above minimum wage. The fact that we don't believe in our own generation. The fact that the generation preceding us doesn't believe in us, even though they complained when the generation preceding them did the same. No matter how great we are, what great things we do, we're classified as a lazy generation that isn't as good as those before us. But if this question was asked 5, 15, or 50 years ago, the answer would be the same. It's a multi-generational, unavoidable, self-deprecating cycle of stereotypes that are in place to help legitimize the elder generation after they felt scorned when they were teens. And instead of fighting it as a group, we agree and blame each other. Okay, here's what I'll say on this one. If they're complaining that you have it easier than they did, that means that the previous generation did accomplish something, and you're gonna make life a little bit easier for the generation after. That's kinda how it goes. If you're gonna choose not to acknowledge that, okay, go live in a cave and rub some sticks together until you make fire. I'll leave you in the woods with a hand axe and we'll see how long it takes before you can send me a text. Parents tell me I'm not educated enough on social issues and I'm not making up my own mind. I get educated on social issues and make up my mind on those issues, but I don't share my parents' opinions on things. Suddenly, my perspective on these issues doesn't matter because I'm too young and I lack real-world experience. Give me a break. Sounds like your parents wanted you to make your own decisions and aren't happy that you didn't make the same ones they did. The worst part is honestly homework. I would rather go to school for longer and have less breaks if we don't get any homework, because it just ends up being longer work than if we just added 2 more hours of school, and tons of stress. Also, an issue with this is that teachers don't necessarily communicate how much homework they're giving to the kids, and thus can end up giving them a lot more than intended when all of them start piling up. For me, it's the stereotypes about us. Not all of us are pot-smoking, weed sock-wearing, sex-crazed, uneducated, and disrespectful jerks. We're considered a terrible generation, when really we're probably no more rebellious or terrible than our parents were at that age. I gotta agree with you on this one, but let me tell you again, everyone who was ever a teenager went through this. Other kids my age that think they're better than us because they listen to classic rock. This is always going to be a thing. People are going to tell you that their music's better than yours. Doesn't matter when it came from or who it is. Everyone has their opinions and they think they're cool because of it. For me, it's peer pressure. I'm sure it was the same years ago, but I recently moved from Massachusetts to California, and it was my first time ever being legitimately exposed to anything like weed or alcohol. I spend time with the people who are all about partying and hooking up and stuff, and I don't like that stuff, but I like the people. So my best friend comes up to me with questions like, "So have you hooked up with anyone yet?" And I'm like, "No." And he instantly goes around to every girl he knows I'm into or find somewhat attractive and asks them to hook up with me. And I know he means well, but it just makes me feel really weird because I was brought up being told never to touch drugs or alcohol and not to date until college and stuff like that. Just me, of course. It could be different for others. Also, you're constantly pressured to excel at something, and I don't. I'm just not amazing at anything. I'm average in every way. Let me tell you, buddy, 99.999999% of people are average. Don't feel like that's a mark against you. Being written off as a teenager regardless of your mental capacity or maturity. By that logic, one could write off humanity as a whole. Participation awards are dumbing everyone down. My peers are too entitled. Everyone's treated like a perfect star when they're younger because parents think their kids can't handle not being perfect, when it's really just the parents who want to see their kids be the best. Everyone grows up thinking they're special, and then either won't accept that they aren't when they're older, or has a hard time coming to terms with it. We're taught that we're all winners, but that takes away the joy of actually accomplishing or being good at anything. The peer pressure is overwhelming. The pressure to lose your virginity, smoke, drink, and do drugs. I'm almost 19, and I'm the last virgin among my friends. They're not really pressuring me to lose my virginity, but it just sucks to feel left out of the loop. It sounds like most of this pressure is coming from yourself. Don't worry, everyone takes life at their own pace. Being written off as a hormonal teenager really sucks. Parents don't believe that I'm depressed. They think I've been in a bad mood for these past few years. I'm pretty sure that harmful thoughts alone would merit a trip to a therapist's office. Not to mention the daily struggle of getting out of bed, going to school, hiding my wrists, pretending to be normal. I'm a teenager, so I'm just lazy or moody. One of my friends recently announced she's pregnant. She's 14. People say our generation is childish. I disagree. Our generation is growing up too fast. It's terrifying. I've yet to have my first kiss, drive a car, drink alcohol, have a child. All of these things that are now being achieved by kids 3 years younger than me. It's just not right. Knowing how badly the generations before us screwed the environment up is a really scary thought. The type of stuff other teenagers are into. No, Greg, I don't want to get drunk at 10 a.m. For me, it's just the transition. I just want to get settled, out of college, secure job, marriage. I'm 19 and currently enrolled in my 3rd different college. Granted, not everyone chooses to transition that much, but it is frustrating. Being told that everything that is discussed in school is absolutely necessary later in life. Screw that. I'd like trade schools, where we learn what we need to learn, and not everything the human race has discovered since the beginning of our existence. I'll say at the age of 32, I've never had to solve for the area under a curve. That if I want to be part of the popular group at my school, I need to be rich, smoke a lot, and drink a lot. Pro tip, there's no such thing as a popular group unless you make one out to be. They're just a group of people who enjoy each other's company, like you enjoy your friends' company. They have similar interests like you and your friends do. They aren't special. Why look up to them? Mood swings. What's that? You're in a great mood? Well, I'm gonna kick your heart in the balls for no apparent reason. Have fun overanalyzing every tiny aspect of yourself. Again, this is something that might never go away. Your entire life is online friends and relationships. You're a nerd or loser or whatever at age 14. People can track that back at age 24. It's ridiculous and kind of sad. People spend way too much time worrying about making their social media personas so big that they lose sight of the relationships in front of them. You never really know someone. This is one thing I will say is social media was nowhere near as big a thing when I was in high school as it is now. I can only imagine the added crap that goes along with that. I'm a virgin by choice. Most of my other friends have had quite a bit of sex. I get crap because I want to wait to lose my virginity with someone I've been dating for at least a couple of years, because I want it to mean something. My friends had a competition over spring break to see who could screw the most girls in a week, and they don't understand why I don't want to be like them. Education is incredibly expensive, and yet we're lazy or whatever for not attending college. A lot of kids in my graduating class don't give a crap anymore because they know they can't afford the higher education they want. All a lot of us care about at this point is graduating. We aren't given many options. Personally, learning to be a man without my father being there to guide me and teach me how. He passed away when I was 13. Aside from that, it's the overall standards that I'm being held up to. I'm the youngest child in my family, and my brother and sister both graduated high school with honors and are off pursuing great things. Then there's me. I'm just different from them. A freshman in high school who lives with a mom that just doesn't get that I see things and do things differently. Their knowledge is in books, and mine is in the sheets of music. I hate feeling like that makes me useless. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. The standards are what's hurting a lot of teens. The fact that teenagers exist as some sort of pseudo-protected class and are hardly expected to be able to wipe their own butts, let alone make intelligent life decisions. There's a systematic lack of responsibility held by teenagers in our society such that any driven, motivated individual is aberrant. For the entirety of human history, people past the age of 14 or 15 were treated as responsible adults, but nowadays, many are coddled well into their 20s. I think it leaves people unable to ultimately become responsible members of society, and it's managed to create a positive feedback loop. Society doesn't give teenagers responsibility, so they become irresponsible, making society view them as unable to hold responsibility, and to withdraw even more. The expectations placed upon the average teenager typically involves not getting wasted or high on school nights and avoiding trouble with the police. Good grades are nice too, but maybe you can't manage to do your homework because you're meant for better things. This, instead of a system that existed even until the early 20th century. Make your way in the world or get left behind. I don't advocate a return to this system, but I do believe that more responsibility needs to be placed on young adults in order to foster their development into effective members of society. This is true. If you want them to be able to take responsibility, you need to trust them with some. The fact that it takes a bachelor's degree to babysit ticks me off. I'm trying to find a summer job and I can't get anything because I have no experience. But how do I get experience if I can't start anywhere? The fact that I'm 19 and get put in a group with 14 and 15-year-olds. Also, my senior year of high school, I had to ask to go to the bathroom. Now in college, no one gives a crap, and I'm solely responsible for myself. How does high school prepare me for college again? School is basically pointless, and going to college doesn't guarantee you the ultimate high-paying 9-to-5 anymore. Just because I know people will be like, your education is important, school is very good. Shut up. Learning is what's important. and that doesn't go on a whole lot in school anymore. And I know this gets said a lot by kids that slack in school to excuse themselves for being lazy and stupid, but I'm an AB student and I agree that a grade doesn't define anyone's intelligence. Yet, grades are all that's supposed to matter to kids these days. It's really pretty stupid, especially considering how little most college degrees do for us nowadays. The people suck. My bio teacher would put my classmates and myself down every day. People would report her all the time, and nothing happened. Finally, one day, I was like, I'm done. I'm making it stop. I recorded her on my phone, which is apparently called unlawful wiretap, yet I was in a public setting. Anyway, I caught so much stuff that she even downright refused to teach us anymore. Yeah, some kids in the class didn't always pay attention, but what she did was way overboard. She got suspended until we left her class. She took me to court. Since I didn't have a malicious intent, I get to go on a lovely program called diversion. I have to basically be on probation until November, and I have to do 30 hours of community service. All because I recorded my teacher to show the administration. I've never been in any sort of trouble. The school cop even got a good word out about me. I actually tried to be decent to this teacher, even though I hated her, and now she's talking crap about me. So much so that someone from my mom's job said that she called us degenerates. Just childish. And she's supposed to be the adult. One day, I got a large door jammed between my toes and punched a kid in the face, and he let it go. In that situation, I was definitely in the wrong and got nothing. The one where I feel I did the right thing, I got punished. I just hate people. This is just unfortunate to hear, honestly. It's the administration that should be doing something about the teacher that's causing problems. And you shouldn't get in trouble for doing what was necessary to prove to them that this was going on when they weren't doing their jobs properly to begin with. I hate the stereotyping of teenagers. People think all teenagers are obsessed with is swag and Instagram. Me and a lot of other teenagers are not like that. I also don't like when adults think my points are invalid because I'm 14. There are absolutely 14-year-olds with more common sense than people in their 30s, and sometimes you need to acknowledge that. The amount of general expectations of you, at least in the US, everyone who wants to succeed has to play 3 sports, play a musical instrument, get a 4.0 GPA, do way too many hours of community service, and still get 10 hours of sleep a night. I call bull on that. How being smart is frowned upon by other teenagers. Seriously, how often do you see reading or actually being intelligent as something a cool person does? No, they're always smoking and partying and drinking at age 15, and stupid things like that. In a few years, you're gonna come to learn that the word cool doesn't mean what you think it means.
What's one thing from the 1990s that will never be popular again? Being in front of the TV with friends and family at a certain time to watch a certain show, and if you missed it, you missed it. Free AOL Frisbees in the mail. Here's $20. I'll pick you up at 8 when the mall closes. Don't talk to strangers. Payphones. Really hoping parachute pants come back. Personally, I've got a soft spot for Jinko jeans. Pogs, even if Alf comes back for it.
Hey Bart, you know Alf? He's back in Pog form.
The golden age of shareware, the idea of actually owning the software you buy and decent file sharing through Napster before companies inundated LimeWire and the like with virus-infected decoy seeds. Get off the internet, I need to use the phone! Yo, MTV Raps.
Palm Pilots.
What the figgity-uck is a Palm Pilot? Oh, a PDA. I'd see them around a lot, and I remember wanting one real badly, but I wouldn't know what it was for, and why the hell would I even have one, because I was a feral ADHD goblin child. Phone booths. Rewatching The Matrix is a constant reminder of this. The film still holds up incredibly well, but the technology doesn't so much unless you can suspend your belief for the time period. See, when I was a kid, I thought The Matrix was cool. I especially thought that Matrix 2 Reloaded was cool, but now I'm older, I don't really like the films anymore. Purchased cell phone ringtones. You have received a collect call from, "Hey mom, I'm fine and going to a friend's house." Burning CDs for every occasion and writing said occasion on CD with Sharpie. Honestly, I think that's a nice, charming way of just cataloging memories and important moments in your life that are connected to a song. Y2K hype. There were a ton of futuristic shows and movies about the net. Let's just say it turned out differently and less cool than portrayed. Not really a 90s show or anything, or even franchise, but Mega Man Battle Network I always thought had like a pretty cool impression of the internet. Like with the net navies and everything. Tamagotchi. Hope for the future. I don't see Discmans making a comeback or those white seashell and coral necklace things everyone had, boys and girls both. Surprisingly, rollerblading seems to be making a bit of a comeback though. I see them at skate parks now quite often. They actually rip too, grinding flat bars and stuff. Remember free refills at coffee shops and ashtrays on every table? Affordable housing, hope, progress, an idea of a better and happy future for all mankind. Jinko jeans. Not having a cell phone or anyone expecting you to have a phone on you at all times. VHS tapes and DVDs. Oh, we'll see who has the last laugh when the world goes to pot, the internet goes down, rendering the streaming services useless, and then I'm there with my Malcolm in the Middle all seasons DVD box set, my bicycle hooked up to a generator so I can power my TV and DVD player. We'll see who has the last laugh. But for real, DVDs are super cool. Physical media is king, and sometimes they come with really cool bonuses like behind-the-scenes information and whatnot, which can be really fun to look into. First-run syndication TV shows. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were really only three major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, with PBS and Fox having just launched. But Fox was still a very new thing that struggled to fill airtime. There were a lot of independent TV stations, though, that aired mostly reruns, old movies, game shows, etc. Then, Star Trek The Next Generation premiered in '87 as a first-run syndication show, meaning it aired on whatever local network wanted to pay for the rights on any day at any time. It was a huge success, and suddenly there was a ton of action-adventure shows going to first-run syndication. Those local stations that had nothing to show on certain nights loved it. Baywatch was directly syndicated and was one of the most watched TV shows in the world for one point. Then there was Xena, Hercules, ST, DS9, Babylon 5, Relic Hunter, Viper, and just a ton of other light-hearted action-adventure TV that doesn't really exist anymore. As a 90s kid, it was great. When UPN and the WB formed, a lot of those independent stations didn't need to fill airtime anymore. By 2000, the market had shrunk, and today, with streaming, it's gone for good. Those t-shirts that reacted to heat and changed color? It turns out that bright purple armpits never became acceptable. I think the brand was Global Hypercolor. One of those inventions. Just because you can make it doesn't mean you should. I don't know, those shirts sound kinda cool actually, just on the concept alone. The creation of a major television network, or the attempt to do so. After Fox succeeded in the mid-80s to create the Big Four, and remember that PBS counts as a major as well, you saw attempts like the WB, UPN, and their merger in the CW. With streaming services, weblets, and specialized networks that only deal with a single topic, like the Weather Channel and ESPN, proliferating the airwaves, there's never going to be an appetite for another major network, or the rationale present to develop the funding necessary to create and sustain it until it becomes self-supporting. Not in the reality we're all currently living in. To do so, you have to have several things: a national news division, a dedicated sports division, a production division capable of turning out massive amounts of sustainable content, and it has to be scripted as well as non-scripted content, or reality television as it's called. A schedule that covers the entire week for at least 8 to 12 hours of original content daily, and a national network of television affiliates that broadcast your content. And in the cases of your news division, represent your main network in that affiliate's broadcast area. I remember how difficult it was for Fox back in the 80s, but as a fellow student in radio and television pointed out to me, they have a national news division, a weekly schedule, content, and local affiliates nationwide. Don't let anyone fool you, they are a network. And it's never going to happen again. Okay, being a media student, I find this stuff really interesting. I was not expecting a double feature on things like, about syndication and how Fox established itself as a giant network or whatever, but I don't think I completely agree with the idea that there'll never be a new TV network or something like that, because streaming platforms, from what I can tell, while they are somewhat profitable, they just don't seem like they're as profitable anymore as people like to think, and they're very restrictive business-wise, because the instant that you try to change anything, people are really finicky with it. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to get everything all at once in a week, and now more and more shows are going back to releasing an episode a week or something. Or the fact that all of them are now trying to make more money off of people by restricting how many people can really have an account at once, I wouldn't be surprised if regular old TV made a comeback eventually. Limp Bizkit. They're one of the few bands unable to capitalize on nostalgic fans and have to cancel their last 2 tours for safety concerns and personal health reasons, which methinks is face-saving code for poor ticket sales. I actually rather like Limp Bizkit, and after they've said that, I might see if they're touring through England. Running home from the playground to watch and record your favorite cartoons on the VHS, spending hours at the video store, or reserving your favorite movies in advance. I still remember the 2+1 deal and how happy I was when I got an extra movie.
Colored ketchup.
Did anyone say Carrot Top yet? Pontiac Sunfire. PlayStation 1. While the PlayStation 1 itself is definitely not going to be making a comeback anytime soon, I do believe that the appeal of low poly graphics, like based on PlayStation 1 graphics, are slowly and gradually becoming more and more popular among people as an aesthetic choice. Smoking in restaurants. Shoulder pads. I could have swore shoulder pads were like a 70s thing. Pet rocks, like the ones that were actually sold. Cereal box prizes that are actually in the box and don't require a sign-up or something. I once got Lion King themed limited edition Pogs from a cereal box, had to save 3 barcodes and mail them in. They were awesome. Otherwise, there was always a gift or toy in the box. I miss those days. Companies don't use promotions like this anymore because they know we'll have to eat anyway. No need to market food anymore or make it appealing or exciting. So sad. Sony Walkman and Discman. Peanut butter and jam in the same jar. For good reason, that sounds awful. Then again, apparently English peanut butter and American peanut butter are two completely different beasts. I don't think movies like the original Blair Witch Project 1999 would have the hype it did. The internet changed a lot of things. That website with its lore, hidden secrets, and that most folks then couldn't go Google to see it was obviously fake. The number of people that believed it was real was insane. That would never happen today. Cheat codes and hidden characters are mostly gone now because of the internet. The secrets to unlock hidden characters in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 were all word of mouth. When playing Tears of the Kingdom, I can literally find out every secret item on launch day. Very different from the original Legend of Zelda, where you had a map of the overworld that came with the game and were told, good luck. And yeah, it is too easy to complete games nowadays with the internet. Even I'm guilty of using the internet when I get really, really stuck in a game somewhere, though. What I really hate, though, is when games nowadays glitch out so badly that they just stop you from progressing and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then you get told, oh, you've just glitched. Other people have had the same problem. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Games being made and shipped as complete products worthy of the price you're paying day one. Having a face and body that hasn't been altered in some way or filtered and edited in photos. I remember when the furthest we would go to deceive people about our appearance was wearing a push-up bra. Yeah, filters are just super lame nowadays. And plus, let's be honest, I think people have trained their eyes now to be able to tell when a filter is being used. Smoking the devil's lettuce from an aluminum can. Furbies. Mofos being sensitive about everything. Play-Doh, Slinkies, boy bands, video rental stores, Will and Jada Smith. Laserdisc, Trapper Keepers, Paul Frank brand. I feel like there only used to be 15 famous people. Nowadays there are 100,000 famous people that you've never heard of. Polaroid nudes from your significant other. Teachers telling students that they can't speak a language other than English in class because I know you're talking about me. Prank calls before caller ID. Talking to your beloved on a landline with your family listening in because the only phone in the house is in your living room and your granny is making pumping motions with her hips whilst the rest of your family is giggling in the background. Screw that. Nah, mate, you just can't take the banter. Not sure if it was popular exactly due to limited release, but OK Cola. It was okay. My college roommate and I used to call the 1800 number repeatedly to hear OK jokes or get free coupons. We loved it. Probably everything I just said will never return. Human decency. There are far too many people going for imaginary internet points these days. Luckily, Eurodance boy bands phenomena like Take That and Backstreet Boys, Unlucky, Grunge, and Nirvana, Movie Phone, Aquanet, payphones, and phone books. When you think about the level of convenience that we have compared to, say, the 80s or even the 90s or 2000s even, it is crazy. Checking the free TV guide from the Sunday paper to find out which of the Cinemax or Showtime was going to have a softcore smut that shows breasts after your parents went to bed. Wait, maybe that was the late 80s.
Blockbuster, Purple Tomato Sauce, Saturday Disney Cartoons, Moon Boots, Pogs, Orbit Soda, Dial-Up Internet, Portable CD players, WCW, Tamagotchis, and Fanny Packs.
In England, we call them bum bags because 1, fanny pack sounds stupid, and 2, well, it's kind of a gendered word here in England. Lunch tickets. Back then, we'll get a yellow and black ticket calendar to get our food, and we had to give them to a ticketer. Green, yellow, and red cards for behavior. This was elementary. If your card was green, you'll get a surprise or some sort of pizza party. If your card was red, you'll get no pizza party, nor prize, and you'll do standards. Yellow was like a warning to get your act together. Spinner rims, like what were people thinking? Real comedy. I feel like you can't push boundaries anymore. Drawing animation. Long, dumb arguments about some trivia where there was no clear answer, so everyone left still believing they were right. When I was in middle school, you couldn't just pull out your smartphone to Google if Marilyn Manson actually removed a set of ribs so he could suck his own mini Manson. Hit shows with 1990s TV production value. There was such a vast difference between TV and movies. Shows like X-Files and NYPD Blue were very much exceptions in terms of production value. Most stuff looked cheap and shoddy. I mean, me personally, I would rather pick classic Magnum PI over, say, the more recent CWDC shows, because, God, those look awful now. I remember when my friends were raving about how good Arrow or maybe even The Flash were back in the 20-teens or whatever. But now, God, they have fallen. Those big wooden roundabouts with no seats or handles. Kids actually being kids. I loved running around the small green with my school pals. The whole be back when the streetlights come on is a way of knowing what time we had to be home. The fact that social skills were an actual thing. The lack of mind-numbing tech. And Snake. If you're wondering and don't know what he means by Snake, it's basically an old game. I used to be with it. Then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what is it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you. Very, very underrated Simpsons quote in my opinion. Lead paint poisoning. I remember always seeing lawyer commercials about getting compensation. Not pleasant, but popular. Absolute golden age of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. So many classic cartoons were created at that time. Unfortunately, my eyeballs would not wipe their butts with Cartoon Network at this point. I'm not sure if they mean like Cartoon Network or Adult Swim being at their best anymore, because I don't know, the characters and cartoons of the 90s are still revered to this day. I mean, there was that cartoon recently called Jellystone, I think, which is literally just all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, save for Scooby-Doo, I think. Living in a town, and I think they gender swapped a bunch of the characters because otherwise it would just be a huge sausage fest. Out of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, I rather like Top Cat and Snagglepuss. Don't know why they're both cats, but I always liked it when Snagglepuss went, "Heavens to Murgatroyd!" Anyone remember the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Olympics? Having an attention span, like even just watching TV without constantly checking the phone to look up something. Well, you see, buddy, you're talking to the wrong guy here, 'cause I was born with ADHD. I've never had an attention span. Shell suits, hopefully. Jimmy Savile. For those of you who don't know who Jimmy Savile is, you're probably American or something like that. Basically, he was a BBC presenter who got caught being a kiddie diddler. I say caught, but it was more that everyone knew he was a kiddie diddler, but he had so much influence and power, essentially, as a celebrity, like one of the biggest celebrities in the UK for a time, I think, that basically no one could do anything about it until he died, and then basically everything spilled out about how the BBC colluded with him and stuff like that. It was a whole freaking thing when it happened. That one phone line that you would call and they would tell you the time. TV shows only having 3 commercials for a break. Then it went to 6. Going to clubs and raves with huge sound systems until 6 a.m., the UK government put laws in place to stop people openly partying all night long. From what I can tell from watching old shows, basically calling people gay as though it's top banter. I would say jelly shoes because of how goddamn uncomfortable they were, but they're back. Pages and everyone having a code so you knew who was paging you. Wearing clothes backwards, it was a whole vibe. I just don't believe you. I don't believe that wearing your clothes backwards was ever a vibe. Flip phones? Well, you say that, and yet the Samsung flip phone came out a couple years ago, and I absolutely love mine. Like, when I finally moved on from my 90s Nokia flip phone to whatever the hell I got in 2013 as my first actual my new phone or whatever, I was just there like, man, I wish this was a flip phone. And then finally, in 2022 or 2021, Samsung answered my prayers, and I frickin' love it. Having a low spending market, everything seems to be increasing by the day. Vanilla Ice. Hip hugger pants with a thong peeking out. Very common in the mid to late 90s. Visiting people in person randomly. Like, people would just drop by, or we'd you'd be out and stop by to see a friend. We were more hospitable, had more free time, and there was no cell phone, so it wasn't like you could call, so expectations were different. You know, when I first read that, I thought it said randomly visiting people in prison. I was like, what? Having to wait till 9 to call your girlfriend so you could get free minutes? Apparently, gaming in person with 2 players. I'm told you need separate consoles now. That actually annoys me nowadays with all of like the development that we've made in gaming and technology, in gaming and whatnot. Multiplayer is kind of stagnant, especially local co-op and everything. Like as someone who is a younger brother and whose brother didn't want to play games with him, or like, you know, he played single player games all the time. I wanted more games where I could actually like play through the entire game with my brother or my friends or whatever. It's just something that I think more games need to concentrate on. Flesh out multiplayer mechanics for God's sake.
Afraid of the dark on Nickelodeon.
It is impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there how cool the Macarena was the first week. The Jerry Springer Show. Gas was 89 cents a gallon and cigarettes were $9.99 a carton. Inflation's a female dog, honey. Internet cafes with full tables of boxy desktop computers, and you had to like pay by the hour to use it sometimes. I used to love this skeezy internet cafe that I used to go to with my friends. We'd play Call of Duty, S4 League, Dawn of War, or like mods of Warcraft with One Piece and Bleach characters. And they'd host all-nighters once a week on a Friday, and you'd be there till like 6 a.m. playing whatever the hell you want, and they'd give us the keys, and people would make like snack runs and everything. Man, those were good times. Animorphs books and the short-lived TV show. I think someone's making like a comic that's still going now, actually, of Animorphs. Hamster dance. Really elaborate home theater setups, component stereo systems. In mainstream use, I know there are still niche enthusiasts. Our first house was pre-wired in the family room for surround sound speakers. I would actually love a home theater system. Doing research using encyclopedias and dictionaries. Excessively violent, borderline hentai anime. Oh yeah, they don't make them like they used to. I remember watching the frickin' Guyver on a VHS when I was a kid with my mom and stuff. That was crazy. It was literally the show that told me or showed me that heroes don't always win. Or something like Ninja Scroll, which, God, do not watch Ninja Scroll if you have a weak constitution and are afraid of, well, some pretty violent and horrible sexual stuff going on. Because I remember when I was 13 years old, my mom's friend was like, oh, he likes anime? I got him an anime DVD. Didn't even bother to look at the fact that it was an 18 plus. Also, please, believe me, I know some of you hate when I do too much commentary on these, but if I weren't doing this, I would literally be saying POG about 1,000 more times.
Late-night TV psychics, Miss Cleo, Sylvia Brown, John Edward, etc. Some of them couldn't even predict their own demise.
Apparently Surge, the gateway soda to a booger sugar habit. Life. Back in the 90s, life was so much better for a lot of reasons. We were much happier than today, and we didn't have technology. We had more privacy than today before social media came by. Things were cheaper than today. My parents used to buy the newspaper for 15 cents back then. Today, it's €1.50 for the daily one. As a kid, I was much happier meeting other kids at school, and we used to play a lot. Something like a shoebox was like winning the lottery. School used to be more exciting than today. I loved coloring books as a child. There weren't any automated phone systems back then, and you used to get on the phone with a company with ease. Everyone used to go outside for services, and we used to meet a lot of people, have a chat, and I used to play with anything. Riding the bus used to cost 15 cents. Today it's €2 before the government made them free. McDonald's used to be like a Disneyland to me. The toys used to be like winning the lottery. Street food like pasties used to cost 8 cents, and I used to eat 2 of them, and they were pretty good. Today you need to spend 60 cents for 1 pasty. TV shows were better than today's. I really loved Power Rangers and Baywatch, and I still love them till this day. MTV used to be about music and not reality shows. It used to be exciting. You didn't need to pay to watch TV back then, and it used to be good. Today, to watch TV, you have to pay only to see garbage being aired on the television. I do think that ever since modern technology emerged and life became faster, it's no longer the life I once knew. Everything is becoming boring nowadays. Inflation is a real female dog. Life was so much better back then. I still miss the 90s. Like, no duh, inflation sucks, and yeah, of course, everyone's gonna miss the times when they were younger and everything, and happier and whatnot because they were a kid. It's nostalgia and whatnot. I think the most probably profound thing that they said was about how the rapid expansion of technology, fast living, and things like people being made redundant from simple jobs like phone lines and everything. I hate it when they put me through to a robot when I want to talk to a person who could fix my very, very specific problem that the robot or whatever, or the automated phone system just doesn't give me the option to do. But I guess I'll stop there because the deeper I get into that topic, the more depressed I'll become. Good night, all!
Reddit, what are some college majors that should definitely be avoided? If you're a journalism major, getting involved in student publications and media is way more important than classes. Journalists aren't hired based off their degree, but how well acclimated they are to newsrooms, deadlines, and things like that. You can't learn the trade in a classroom, only in the field. Classes are just to help you refine your skills and the little things. Standalone language majors. How are you, a student learning a language in less than 4 years, going to compete with a bilingual speaker who also has skills for the workforce? You have to pair it with something else. If you want to major in a language, you double major. I was looking for this one. I cannot tell you how many people major in a language without studying abroad and think they're going to be able to move to that country and work there. I did German and linguistics, double major, and am doing my master's in Germany with the intention of teaching English as a second language. Some of my friends just majored in French or German and planned on moving over here and getting any kind of job. This isn't something I've ever thought about, but makes a lot of sense when you lay it out like that. General studies. Just pick a major. Being undecided all 4 years won't look great on your first resume unless you leave undergrad with some amazing experience that translates into an immediate position. I was a history major. 'Twas fun, but no money. Now I'm a zookeeping major. Tons more fun and even less money. If you don't plan on getting at least a master's degree, avoid psychology. I've known several servers, bartenders, and receptionists that have their degree in psychology, even a few that have ended up in retail. Not that I look down on those jobs, just that they clearly don't require a psychology degree. To get a job in the field, you pretty much need to have a master's at least. Art history. My current roommate, out of college now, was an art history major. She doesn't do any art herself, she just really likes art. Spends a lot of her weekends going to museums and galleries. She can't find a job in what she wants to do. Has an entry-level position as an office administrator, and she hates it. She can't really move up much in her company because she doesn't have the knowledge of the industry she's in. She went to a private university for it, and will be paying off loans for a long time. This is one that before even coming to this thread, I heard was a rough one to try and get a job with. Be careful when studying music. Most universities offer music performance and music education. Getting a bachelor's in music education means you're certified to teach at a school, and therefore has a lot more potential of getting you a job. Music performance just means you got really good at playing your instrument. You'll still have job options such as giving lessons, starting your own studio, joining a professional symphony, or just being a freelance musician. But those all have varying levels of difficulty and instability. For example, to get into a symphony, you have to be the best of the best, at least for top-tier symphonies. So your probability of being hired depends solely on your audition. And to be a freelance musician means that there may be periods where you're unemployed. And even when you are hired by someone, you'll go most of the time without insurance or a retirement fund. And then you have to factor in the location you're in. If you're in an area that's musically dry, you won't be finding any paying gigs unless you're a teacher. There may be plenty of people wanting your services like churches, community bands, and musical pit orchestras, but you probably won't get paid. Yeah, unfortunately, artists and musicians have it rough nowadays, especially based on your area. Non-accredited majors. Even if it sounds like a good degree, mechanical engineering for example, it might not be accredited, meaning it doesn't hold anywhere near the value. I'm only using mechanical engineering as an example. This is normally an issue with university programs that are new, which means that their program normally wouldn't have accreditation. It would be in the application process. It's quite the gamble when you're a new student, because if they don't get accreditation by the time you graduate, you're SOL. Yeah, that would be the last thing you want, is to waste a whole bunch of money on a class that literally means nothing to anyone. Biology. Unless you want to go to med/farm/vet school or graduate school, a BS in biology won't get you very far, and you'll max out in earning potential early on. A lot of bio majors go back for their MS or PhD because they're stuck at low pay scale. If you already know that's what you want to do, you're fine. Make sure you do a BS and not a BA though. Don't do something you dislike because you think it's a good career path. Work is going to be a major part of your life, so aiming for something you can't stand doing is a bad idea. I'm fighting with that sort of. I decided to major in something I love, but I hate it now because it's becoming a career instead of a hobby. The career I want is generally lower pay, but I'd rather major in that because I'd actually be happy. This is the conflict I think a lot of college students go through. There's the thing that you want to do, but you kind of don't want to do it as a job because then you won't want to do it anymore. Versus the thing that you don't want to do, but it pays really well. I don't know. It's a tough decision to make either way. My last job was at a gas station chain, and I met at least 3 hourly gas station managers who had biology master's degrees. Blew my mind that they were attempting to pay down $120,000 worth of loans on $20 an hour. Everyone I know with a bio or biochem master's is employed in research or by private firms. What the heck were your coworkers doing? Criminal justice. It seems to be the new default major for people who don't actually know what they want to do now that psychology is out of vogue. I work at a courthouse and I never graduated college. Most of the new people are trying to get in with criminal justice degrees because it'll look good on their resume, and there are a ton of people applying with that major. Very competitive. Criminal justice sounds like something that would be useful if you're going for something in the law field, but maybe not? I don't know. It's not always just about the major, but what else you do in school. I got my degree in anthropology, which as a bachelor's doesn't mean much in itself. But I managed to get into courses where I did actual research and got my name co-published in a couple professional journals. That was something I've been able to market to employers as much, if not more, than the degree. Same thing goes for something often badmouthed, like women's studies. I have 2 close friends who went that route and are both employed in careers. Women's studies, not STEM, prepared them to go on to get social work degrees, which is where they now make their living. Agreed. An in-demand major helps, but doesn't mean jack if you don't put in the work to network and intern. A crappy degree held by someone who did internships for at least the latter half of their education will be looked at better than a good degree holder with no experience. So, incoming college goers, intern, network, schmooze. Yeah, I think more and more places are going routes like this. Your college degree doesn't exactly mean a whole lot. Everyone wants experience. Or if you've managed to get an internship somewhere, then you've already gotten your foot in the door. Problem with internships is a lot of the time you're working for free for a while without a guaranteed job at the end of it. Unless you eat, sleep, and breathe architecture, do not even consider it as a major. You'll spend more money, more sleepless nights, and more of your sanity than any other student. Unless you have the passion necessary to make those sacrifices, forget it. Learn from my mistakes. I just finished a dual master's in architecture and urban design. Everything you said 100%, except now that I'm out and working, there was indeed light at the end of the tunnel. I feel bad talking crap about my own degree, but biomedical engineering. Maybe not avoid it, but make sure you have an idea of what you like at the beginning or early as possible, and tailor your work experience, classes, and training to that speciality. For example, if you like prosthetics, have things that show you're ready to compete with mechanical and electrical engineers over the same position, and that your biology and anatomy knowledge gives you an edge over them. All other engineers have obvious fields they can go into. Biomed is simply just not as flushed out, and employees may just pick grads with majors they fully understand. In my undergrad, I went more of the bioinformatics route and did a lot of coding, so I load up my resume with that stuff, and had 2 internships that furthered my coding ability. But would it have been easier if I just did computer engineering? Possibly. Avoid any major starting with pre-law, pre-med, anything like that. I know several people who became doctors with degrees in chemistry, biology, or engineering. I also know someone who finished pre-med, went to med school, realized he didn't want to be a doctor, and was screwed. He ended up spending 4 years getting a second bachelor's degree. Likewise, you can easily get a law degree and become a lawyer with degrees in all sorts of things. You can't do anything else with a pre-law degree. Criminal justice. I'm about 2 months away from having my AA in criminal justice, but every law enforcement professional I met said don't waste your time getting your bachelor's in criminal justice. Get it in something practical like business or engineering. So if God forbid something happens to you, then you have a degree in something else to fall back on. I want to be a police officer, by the way. That's the second time this one's come up. Maybe that is one to avoid. Don't do a business major if even the smallest amount of math freaks you out. Even in things that aren't accounting or finance, you'll still have to do a little bit in most entry-level positions. I feel like that one's kind of a given. If you're going to be in business, you're going to be handling numbers. Graphic design. The market is oversaturated with designers. Design is very subjective. No matter what jargon pro designers may throw at you about color theory and the golden ratio, when it comes down to you finding a job, it's all about if the employer likes what they see. The current industry is being devalued by sites like Fiverr and 99 Designs, where companies will pay pennies to get a logo or a flyer made. This makes companies not value or need in-house designers. Design agencies are very stuck up, and the culture is almost always cutthroat. The pay sucks. Depending on your city, the entry-level pay can fluctuate, but you'll be making nowhere near the money you could with other forms of education. You most likely will not be doing what you love unless you get lucky. If you become an in-house designer, be prepared to only design stuff related to whatever your company specializes in for the rest of your employment there. If you're hired at an agency, you'll have more opportunities to work on different brands, but may not be the brands you're interested in. If you don't like a crap ton of physics, or if you're not at least somewhat into it, don't go into lucrative engineering fields, because there's a very high chance you'll switch out. If you're in it only for the money, there's a big wake-up call heading for you. Again, engineering, you're going to be doing a lot of math, gotta be prepared for that. First of all, almost every major is useless if you can't show employers what you learned with it, i.e. internships, publications, research, papers and projects beyond what is expected of a college assignment, and things like that. Also, you may have the risk of making your degree useless if you want to stay in a certain area. In doing so, you're limiting your job prospects in that industry. For example, you major in art history, but there's only one art museum in the state and you don't want to leave the state. Secondly, most majors themselves have some degree of usefulness. Supposedly useless majors such as philosophy, history, and psych can be great prep for an advanced grad school degree like pre-law or other intensive writing and research degrees. Others, like English, classics, and journalism, show that you can write well, which is always valuable and can lead to jobs in copywriting, editing, and things like that. That being said, there are some degrees I would not recommend getting. Sports management for one. Coming from someone that worked at the highest levels of athletics, a sports management degree is useless. While there are jobs in sports, they just require you to grind and they're really competitive to get. I know for a fact that hiring managers don't give a crap about what degree you have, except for maybe like athletic training. They just care about your experience. So sports management itself doesn't get you hired, and it eliminates career options if a career in sports doesn't work out. It's also getting a rep that it's an easy major, in which I agree is the case with about 98% of sports management programs. Again, going to what I said earlier using the art history example, probably isn't a great idea to major in sports management if you attend a small private NAIA school in the middle of Iowa. Other useless majors include dance or ballet if you have a bad knee or back, and African American studies from North Carolina. Google UNC academic scandal. Sometimes you do need to use a little bit of common sense. I've seen a lot of people saying foreign language unless you double major. Nobody has yet mentioned that Japanese isn't a happy life, period. There's literally thousands of other Westerners pining for that English teaching job in Japan, and they treat you like dirt when you get there. I'm sure I could name like half a dozen people off the top of my head that would love a job like that. In the UK, if you can afford not to, don't do law. Many law firms I stumbled across prefer non-law rigorous degrees, linguistics, maths, and hard science, and a conversion to law afterwards. If you get good enough grades, you might be able to get your degrees for free because some firm or inn of court will pay for it. If you want to do IP law, just do science. Whatever area of science you graduate from is the area that you can do patents. Also, you can work in the patents office. If you don't want to do law, you'll always get asked the question as to why you studied law and you're not working in law, as I got when I was trying to get a job in PR. Finally, if you want to be a solicitor, forget the LPC. A new super exam came out in 2020, and you won't need to spend 10 to 20k on the LPC to qualify. You will, however, need 2 years work experience, so get that now. Again, another example, everyone just wants you to have experience. They feel you learn more from actually doing the job than from learning about the job. Don't go to college, period, unless you know what you want to do. We've been looking at this all wrong. Start with where you want to be in 10 to 15 years, and then work backwards. What's between you and that place? If college is one of those things, then go to college. Looking at it the wrong way is how we've ended up with $1 trillion in student loan debt. Don't just go to college for the sake of going to college. It would literally be cheaper to travel around the world, and you'd learn more. This is something I completely agree with. This is something I've said before too. Figure out where you want to be and work backwards from there. Then start towards your goal. Graphic design. Honestly, a decent major. Just make sure you take it somewhere you'll have passionate professors and not ones that just link you to a YouTube tutorial. It's easy to teach yourself graphic design rather than dish out like $40,000 to learn it. As someone who's currently enrolled, I definitely agree. Although there is some expectations for students to solve design problems on their own, I think. Professors can only give you the building blocks, not the answer. Second time graphic design came up, and that does sound like a really cool one to work in. Sounds like the way to go is maybe learn yourself online and just start making a portfolio. Anthropology. Last I heard, they crank out about 3,000 master's degrees a year, while there are about 300 job openings per year in the field. Most people, I would say, don't do anthropology to be an anthropologist. A relative got an anthropology degree at 45 and used it to go into financial counseling. There are no bad majors, only bad planning. Your degree doesn't matter in getting a job as much as the grades you get and the work experience you get during the summer. Of course, if you want to do an actual profession, and I mean a profession like medicine, law, or engineering, you do need the requisite degree and good grades and good work experience. Save again for the caveat above, no one really expects you to do anything with what you learned at bachelor's level. What the degree is supposed to do is advertise your abilities and skills. Whether we like it or not, employers will look at academic ability as a key indicator of how trainable and employable you are. Many people downplay the value of good internships and work experience. Yes, a lot of terrible places don't pay at all, but unfortunately, the market is that you need to have experience. You can ask, how could a history major work at an iBank? It's not what you learn from a book, but the skills, analytical, critical thinking, and things like that. It also shows good motivation, planning, and goals. I know many people who did useless degrees who were in some good, non-related jobs. What they did right was good grades, good work experience, and good planning. Unless you're getting into a specialized field, a degree is what a high school diploma was 30 years ago. I'm getting a degree in something I enjoy, philosophy, because everywhere I'd like to work requires something. I don't expect to make a lot, but I expect to make more than I would have without it. It might be easier for me to say this as a Canadian though. Tuition is only around $8,000 with textbooks where I live. My goal is to get my degree and find some office jobs until I land something I like. I just want a clock in, clock out kind of thing. It's easier to have these goals for myself though, since I don't want kids. Other people might have to be more concerned about their finances and earning potential. This is one way to handle it. You get a degree for relatively cheap that's gonna end you a job that pays you well, and you go from there until you find something that you really want to do for the rest of your life. Unless you have future plans for grad school or a specific career path you're dead set on, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Picking something broad like sciences, econ, tech-based, or communications works great. I spent many years past 4 because I thought my major would dictate the rest of my life. It doesn't. You can always go back to community college for a class or two if you want something extra for a specific position you're applying for. Most jobs are entry level and just want to see a bachelor's degree and provide on-the-job training. Doing sales for any company requires knowledge of their specific CRM system, sales approaches, their product that you would never get a major in. One major I have had friends struggle with post-graduation job searching is English, unless they went into teaching or writing a book. If you major in the pure sciences, chem, physics, or biology, you'll have no career in your field without a PhD. And if you're smart enough to complete a PhD in those fields, you're smart enough to do something easier and better paying. I myself got off the research plantation and moved into technical sales when I realized how little of a future there was in chemistry, and my wife moved to statistics and data science. It really sucks to hear that people put in so much time and money into something that they think they're going to be passionate about for the rest of their lives, only to lose that passion or struggle to find a job, or get a job that doesn't pay enough, and they're just in crippling debt for years. What did your school waste money on that nobody liked? They made a huge screen with 4 plasma screens and put it in a very random place in a random building hall. All 4 just constantly said no signal and nothing else. Name tags. Shortly after Columbine and all those other shootings peaked in frequency, it was supposed to keep outsiders from getting in the school unnoticed and shooting everyone. But at the time, people doing the shootings were always students, so we joked that they were bulletproof. This does sound like one of those decisions that was made in response to something happening in current events, and maybe wasn't exactly thought through all the way. Some of my classmates won a bunch of money for our school. Our school was one of the lowest funded schools in the district. The district took the money and spent it on another school. Maybe that school needed it more or needed it for something really important, but yeah, either way, that doesn't seem fair on surface level. The large schoolyard at my school had a set of planters in the center. There were basically 4 triangles made of brick that pointed in at each other and created an X-shaped walkway between. The outside sides had a bench each attached. People would sit and chat to each other on the benches, teachers and students alike. There was very little litter or vandalism. The plants were kinda pretty insofar as any secondary schooler would care to notice. One year, a duck made her nest in one of the planters, and apart from a few "oh, hey, a duck nest" comments, it was left alone. Then, for some reason, the school decided to rip the planters out. Took them 2/3 of the school year to do it, and blocked off the X walkways so everyone had to crush by on the outside lanes between classes. Everyone was super curious as to what the planters would be replaced by. Turns out, nothing. They simply bricked over the holes left by the planters and left it as a huge empty space. We didn't even get new benches, so no one had anywhere to sit during break. People started to miss the plants since the lack of color left the whole area kinda bland. We also kept to the old X walkway since stepping over the former plants felt weirder. This seems like one of those times where it's just like, why? What was the issue? You spent a lot of time and money to just take something away that was nice? iPads for the kindergarten. They were intended to have educational apps on them that kids could play on at indoor recess. Believe it or not, most kindergartners would rather play on the swings or play with dolls than learn to write their name on an app. No one used them, no one liked them, and they all broke within 2 months. Yeah, that sounds like a waste of money if I ever heard one. I was on a boys' varsity soccer team in high school. The new head coach wanted to emphasize a more analytical approach, and as such had Booster Club buy a $10,000 goalpost camera. None of the team liked the idea anyway, especially since the girls' soccer team used their money for new jerseys and nicer balls, and they still made it farther in their playoffs than we did almost every year. As it turns out, the coach couldn't figure out how to put the camera together, and we never used it. Biggest waste of $10,000 I've ever seen. I'm sure there was a much cheaper option he probably could have gone for. Trash cans with the school logo on them and banners. They tried hyping us up about new trash cans on the morning show. At my school, they took away some of the tables in the cafeteria until we kept it cleaner. We just sat on the floor instead. When 65-inch TVs were like 4K a pop, they set about 8 of them around campus that just displayed the time. $4,000 clocks, not to mention whatever they used as a video source to send to the display. This makes no sense to me that you would make an investment like this and then not make proper use of it. What is wrong with people? You can do so much more than just show the time. Be creative, come on. My high school purchased a vending machine that only contained Swerve. What is Swerve, you ask? Carbonated milk. Again, who's in charge of these ideas? A 3D printer that the teachers won't learn how to use, so now nobody's allowed to use it. My school got 4 of those, and the teacher responsible for them actually encouraged us to take the SolidWorks course to learn about 3D design. It was actually a lot of fun, and I still have some of the objects I created. Goes to show, a lot of the times it comes down to the person doing the teaching. They have to have some enthusiasm. A memorial tree was planted for a girl who was killed right before graduation by her family and friends. The school allowed it, and there was a beautiful Japanese maple tree there for like 10 years. Apparently they just cut it down and had no reason why. Everyone was pretty ticked off, especially the family. My son's current school sent out an email to parents announcing that they'd like to add voice projection to every class. He's in 1st grade and there are 20 kids in his class. Totally unnecessary. They had a demo session and it sounded horrible. My high school teacher got these midway through my junior year, and they sucked. The range wasn't great, and the receiver in one classroom would pick up the microphone in another, and the battery life was awful, so the teachers rarely used it. The best thing that they were used for was the one time that my teacher noticed a kid in the room across the hall was asleep in class. They were watching a video and the other teacher had stepped out of the room for a moment. They walked over to the door so that the other room's receiver would pick up his mic and said, "Wake up!" and then closed his door. This really does sound like a waste of money unless you specifically have a kid who has a hearing disability or something. And in that case, normally they have something that is individual to them that connects to their hearing aid and the teacher has a microphone so that they can hear them better. Not something that needs to be projected to the whole class. When I was still a student, my school spent almost $200,000 to paint the road outside our school. You read that right. Almost $200,000 of our precious tuition dollars to paint the roads outside blue and yellow. To pour salt on this painful wound, the paint job didn't even make it through winter. Just to reiterate, $200,000 for 3 months of painted road. I think I'm still angry about it. Who would hear that cost and decide, yeah, that sounds like a good investment? My high school wasted a ton of money buying 2 golf carts. Their reasoning was it allowed staff to get to any dangerous scenes faster. Except we never had any accidents and they were mostly used for joyrides by the hall monitors. You know what? This one I can kinda get behind. It's not some $200,000 expense and they got used and you had a little fun along the way. One of the schools in our district paid an astronomical fee to an artist to create artwork for the hall of the school. Paid for the dude's room and board for like a year, and he produced a large polished piece of wood. No, literally, that's it. It was supposed to be shaped like a heart, but looks more like a butt, and is now known as the Bart. I'm sorry, but sometimes I do think that modern art is just ridiculous and a ripoff. My school just spent tens of millions of dollars on a remodel that includes a new commons and front office area, which were not needed, but no new classrooms, which were desperately needed. The old commons was warm, inviting, bright, and beautiful. It wasn't old. The new commons is dark, cold, sterile, and uninviting. The exterior was changed too. The entire front of the school used to be attractive. Now it looks like a prison. I think maybe the architect presented the design as a joke, but our principal liked it, so the architect just rolled with it. It never fails that when a school gets some money, they spend it on the staff and not the students. They cut out welding, machine shop, wood shop, and graphic design to buy a $1 million scoreboard for football. Honestly, there's way too much value put onto sports. Everything that was listed sounds way more valuable to learn than to be able to look at a scoreboard. Our mascot was a rocket, and a certain percentage of school construction money had to be spent on art. They spent $90,000 commissioning a giant rocket sculpture for the main field entrance. When it was unveiled, the artist had made one tiny change to the design. Instead of a pointy rocket tip, he'd gone with a rounded, mushroom tip. I mean, we thought it was hilarious, especially when they cut off the tip as their solution to the problem. But nobody liked it. I'm sorry, did they circumcise the rocket? My school invested in 8-year-old Chromebooks that die in like 30 minutes. Again, not willing to invest in what the students actually need, and just going for the cheapest, crappiest thing they can find. I'm a teacher. My first year, the school leader bought a ping pong table for the lounge in an attempt to make the school more fun and relaxing. It simply became a surface to put copies on. You know what? This one sounds like it's more of a people around you situation. You guys could be having fun with it, but you're choosing not to. That's on you, not them. Besides, tables themselves can get pretty expensive. At least this one you can play with if you want. My son's elementary school PTO had an excess of funds. They decided to put it on a buddy bench. A buddy bench is a bench where you can sit on if you want a buddy. In theory, it sounded like a decent idea, except that it was placed in the hallway near the office and none of the kids wanted to be identified as someone who didn't have a friend. Nobody ever sits on it. I agree that the theory of the buddy bench is nice, but in practicality, it's probably not going to get used. This wasn't common knowledge, so I was the only one really ticked off by it, but I worked for Cisco Foods as a baker at a university, and the upper echelons of the administration had hired their own personal pastry chef to make these extravagant desserts for their meetings. This pastry chef was legit. She made absolutely amazing desserts of a wide variety every day, loaded them onto the cart, and with her baker's outfit and hat on would wheel it up to their daily administration meetings. Her salary was paid for by the students of the school, so that the administrators could dine on first-class pastries and desserts made from scratch each day. She was really good at her job and actually helped me improve in the bakery. But I was so mad that her job even existed simply to provide pastries to people who just sat around and decided how the school's money was spent. I obviously didn't make a stink about it to anyone because she was my friend, and I would never dream of putting her employment at risk. But I couldn't help feeling like her entire career was to make fat cats fatter, and it just boiled my blood. Okay, this is the first story that has genuinely ticked me off in how money is being spent. Just random TVs in the hallway that showed slideshows and crap. Tens of thousands of dollars when we could have just put up bulletin boards. My school had loads of TVs that I don't recall ever seeing turned on. Seems like there might be a trend in the TV area here. They installed cameras in nearly every inch of the school, not for student safety, but because the school board didn't trust the kids. My school was miles behind other high schools. Old textbooks and sometimes not enough textbooks. Computers were junk, no in-school programs. They spent every ounce of money on cameras and putting the rest in the school board's pockets. I really feel like these places need to be more strongly audited for stuff like this. My high school spent a bunch of money on this system to play popular songs for the last minute of passing time between classes. So we'd hear popular music and as a convenient way to know to get to your next class. Then they started playing Friday by Rebecca Black every Friday. Once. Then it was the only song on Fridays. Then it was the only song. Every day, 5 times a day. Thank God that was my senior year. No idea if they still do it. My God, I hope not. I'm sure the kids would be rioting. My school's mascot was a knight, and it was rumored that the school had the choice of installing a pool at the high school or to commission a large 25-foot-long metal sculpture of a knight on a horse, and to hang it from the ceiling in the back hallway. They opted for the horse. My guess on this one is they didn't want the long-term maintenance cost of the pool. They bought flags of all the states and put them around this caged-in area full of gravel. They caged in the gravel to stop students from walking across the gravel. They also bought flags in the school's color to line the fence around campus. Only thing is, we were in an area which can get very windy with 0 windshield, so those flags took a beating. By mid-year, they were an ugly, ugly frayed mess. My school spent $30,000 from 2 years of fundraising on an LED billboard about 10 feet off of a major road. It was so bright that it caused several accidents at night and had to be shut down about 8 months later because it was deemed a safety hazard. I hung out with several of the guys on the programming team and they figured out how to upload memes onto it. They couldn't figure out who did it, so no one got in trouble. In 2011, my college spent $32,000 to have Snooki come in as an inspirational speaker in some misguided attempt to connect with freshmen. Around the same time, there was a growing student-led movement to make the school more affordable. The student board revolted. People confronted her during her speech. It was a glorious mess. I think anyone who finds Snooki to be inspirational doesn't need to be encouraged. I went to a Catholic high school. Very few of the students were actually Catholic and went there because the local public school district was terrible. We won some contest or grant and the school said they would allow the students to pick what the money was spent on. The options were new flooring for the gym, renovate the courtyard next to the chapel into a prayer garden, or renovating the courtyard next to the cafeteria into an outdoor eating space. Most people voted for new gym floors, and some people voted for the outdoor eating space. I don't know of anyone who voted for the prayer garden. Guess what won? The prayer garden. People, even teachers, were furious, as the voting was clearly rigged to give us the appearance of a choice. If they really wanted a prayer garden, they should have just done the work without putting it to a vote. The funny thing about the prayer garden is that they actually made it nice and put in benches and plants and whatnot, but it was always locked and never used. Administration would often say during tours, "Oh, look at our lovely prayer garden for students. They voted for it." No, we didn't. Wait, the church used the money on themselves? No. i7 workstation laptops with Quadro GPUs, easily $2,500 each, for an elementary school, kindergarten through grade 6. Those machines were designed for CAD work and media production, but were instead solely used for web browsing and Microsoft Word. I don't have any idea why they bought them. Okay, so earlier we were talking about 8-year-old Chromebooks. This school has decided to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. These are laptops that should be available to university students who are studying like 3D rendering and things like that. This really goes to show that the people who decide where the money goes don't have any idea what they're doing. Laminated ID cards that everyone had to wear around their necks on some dorky lanyard. No one did it, so they made it punishable by detention. After that, half the students still didn't do it, and the detention hall became so overwhelmed that they began to make backlogs. After a few weeks, not wearing it gave you a detention 2 months from then. Eventually, detention became so backlogged that students started doing more severe transgressions, because they would have graduated before they could actually be forced to go to detention. After about a month of this, no one had to wear their ID cards at all anymore. They said it was for security purposes so no one could sneak into the school. The thing is, you could literally put anything in the lanyard and no one would check if it was your actual student ID card. I had a blank index card in mine and no one ever said anything to me. If someone actually wanted to sneak into the school, all they would need is a lanyard and no one would ever check if it's actually authentic or not. Like, what's the point? You're gonna sit there and enforce detention that aggressively because you need to flex your power over the students, but you're not gonna enforce the actual safety aspect that you're trying to argue that it's there for in the first place? Guys, this thread's really getting to me. Our school paid to cover a huge lot with cement just to have a ceremony on it announcing a new building. Then they tore it up 2 months later to start construction. My school fees went towards having nice cement for press pictures. What a joke. My school wasted so much money on plastic ID cards that you were supposed to scan into every room to assure you were there, and the IDs were also keys to get into the buildings. If you didn't have your card, you couldn't get in, and also got in-school suspension. It wasn't a bad system because you could easily take a photo of your ID to scan into rooms, but you'd have to bum a buddy to get into a building. But once there were internet problems, the whole system would shut down, and living in a rural wheat town, you could expect wind and rain and tornadoes and all of that fun stuff. My college spent $2,000 on a conference table. It made national headlines. This just reminds me of that scene from Community. When I went to college, the local NFL team paid for the school to go from a grass field to artificial turf. The school never said it was only half paid for by the team. My siblings had a whole year without paper, printers, no raises for staffs, cutting school programs, and they slashed the art budget. The football team still got new uniforms that year though. How are you going to put so much value on your football team? Come on, give the rest of the students what they need. My town got a brand new middle school, and somehow they spent $40,000 on a giant metal palm tree that they called the Learning Tree. One of the chair people essentially commissioned it from a relative. So many of us were ticked off. It didn't even have lights, and there was no way to clean it, so it just sat there like the giant waste of money it was collecting dust. Well, we liked it at first, not so much after. I followed a product development study and we got a fancy industry-grade laser cutter in our workplace. Then after a couple of people were able to use it, the teacher decided it needed cleaning. She proceeded to use a toothpick to shove it into the nozzle where the laser comes out, damaging the mirror inside the machine. We had this thing for less than a week. 2 years later I graduated, and as far as I know, that thing is still broken. Those lasers are incredibly expensive and powerful. What do you think was stuck in there that you could get out with a toothpick that the laser couldn't get out itself? When I started secondary school, we had a canteen with proper home-style food being served. Cooked fresh, real meat and vegetables, and good portion sizes. All the students loved it, and it was well used. The school decided to replace this with a fast food style setup with processed burgers and fries to try to appeal to the kids, and up the prices too. Within a month, nobody visited the canteen anymore. Practically every kid in the school started bringing food from home. It took 3 months till they changed everything back again. Massive expense for absolutely no reason. It was already very successful as it was. Why mess with a good thing? You just wanted to get cheaper food in there and charge more, didn't you?
Teachers, what is the trashiest thing you've seen a parent do? I work at a school where over 80% of our population lives under the poverty line. I keep a cabinet full of hygiene products for kids to take. Deodorant, lotion, chapstick, hair gel, feminine hygiene products, shampoo, conditioner, those kinds of things in travel sizes. Being a teen is hard enough without having to cope with hygiene problems due to a lack of funds at home. So, one day, the entire thing is empty. Odd. I refill the cabinet and 2 days later, all of it is gone again. Refill with the last of my supplies and catch the kid in the act of sweeping everything in his bag. I stop him, take him in the other room, and talk to him. He told his mother about the cabinet. She ordered him to bring her everything he could get. She was returning the items to Walmart for store credit to buy cigarettes and beer. I told him to tell her the cabinet is locked now. I bought a bike lock. It was sickening. A mother came to a school sports day swigging from a bottle of wine. We always felt desperately sorry for her daughter, because whenever she returned to school following a holiday at home, this was a boarding school, we had to wash all of her clothes because they reeked of cigarettes, and this poor little girl was easily the most unhappy child I've ever seen. Woman I used to babysit for worked at a school as an assistant or some crap in Toronto. She always told this story about how the class rabbit would go home with a new kid each weekend. They kept trying to avoid giving one kid the bunny for the weekend because it was clear his home life wasn't the best, but they finally caved in and let him take the rabbit home. The parents killed the rabbit and ate it. They killed the class bunny and fried it up for dinner. They weren't even ashamed when they told the teacher what happened on Monday. Said they were out of groceries or something. A likely story, but what if the boy simply wanted to keep the rabbit for himself forever? You deprived him of taking the rabbit home for so long, and when he finally had the chance to have the rabbit all to himself, he decided, well, what's stopping me from keeping it? Just make up a likely lie and it'll be all his. But if they did actually eat the rabbit, that is totally messed up. Well, in my profession, it's more often what the parents don't do that wins them the Parent of the Year award, but I do have a couple Hall of Famers. I'm a special education teacher, so I deal with kids with all kinds of physical, emotional, and academic disabilities. I took care of a little girl once who had a number of complications due to spina bifida. Her mother couldn't be bothered to take care of her. The little girl wore diapers and was cathed. She required 3 to 5 diaper changes a day. Mom would only send 5 diapers a week. The thing is, she was getting full services from her community, so she was being provided with plenty of supplies. We suspect Mom was probably selling the extras. I ended up just buying her diapers. Mom would not change her catheter regularly. We would change her out at school, but other than that, she'd go another 24 hours before a change out, longer if it was a weekend. The smell from the infections she'd get after a weekend was horrendous. She had lice constantly and oozing bedbug sores. Her mom told us to F off when we call her and tell her to take her to a doctor. Found out later in the year that she also had scabies. We offered to administer the medication and creams at school. Mom told us to go to hell. The girl would come to school in men's underwear, XXL shirts, and size 16 pants. She was 8. Finally discovered that her 9-year-old sister was changing her diapers and dressing her every day, and sister couldn't find any other cleanish clothes to put on her. Mom's response? I'm busy. I have to get to work in the mornings. Final straw was when the nurse discovered what appeared to be STD warts while changing her diaper one day. Nurse made, for the 10th time, another CPS report, but principal insisted that we call home and report our findings. Grandma found out, tipped off Mom, and Mom appeared at the school 15 minutes later, snatched up the kids, and disappeared. Investigators showed up 15 minutes later, but Mom was already long gone. Never saw the kids again. I was wondering to myself the entire time, where the hell are Child Protective Services and why is everyone in this story so freaking useless? I wouldn't really give a crap. That kid wouldn't go anywhere with that woman if it were on my watch. Staff raised money to get an 8-year-old girl a winter coat. We live in rural Canada. Girl came to school the next day in a t-shirt in the dead of winter, her mom wearing the brand new child-sized jacket. For those wondering, the principal confronted her about it, and Mom told her to F off, and anything her kids owned belonged to her and she could do whatever she wanted with it. Children's Aid was called and that student lives with a very nice foster family now. Mother was rail thin, looked like a stereotypical junkie archetype, sleeves were 3 inches too short, didn't cover most of her stomach, and she could do it up properly. Our vice principal is a former army sergeant who's built like a tank. He's well liked and an amazing role model in a community where many of our kids don't have good male role models. On several occasions, I've seen mothers step well over the line and make very asexual comments to him directly in front of their kids. I mean in plain sight of their own children, and in ways the kids notice. He's always very respectful and often asks another member of staff to join him if he sees one of those parents coming to talk. But it's pretty damn trashy when it comes to some of the innuendos I've heard. These aren't jokes either, they tried to get handsy with him too. My cousin is a teacher and she once had a parent come to a parent-teacher conference extremely drunk and right before the meeting tried to pull out a bag of booger sugar and start doing lines. Police were called and so was CPS. The school also had to call 911 once because a parent overdosed in the parking lot while waiting to pick up their kid, and the poor kid was too young to understand why their mom was slumped over in their car. It's quite sad, but I actually also know a teacher or two who's had to look after kids whose parents, don't really look after them and they're kind of addicted to illegal substances, and it's just really sad knowing that stuff goes on and people are so irresponsible with their own lives when they have kids to look after. The sad fact of the matter is some people do not deserve to have children. I volunteer at after-school programs to help tutor. I had a student earlier this year. Good kid, loves math, loves computers, wants to be a programmer when he grows up. He's really struggling in 7th grade because he has no computer at home. We have to do his online assignments at the program, but we only meet twice a week. I pulled his mom aside and explained how he could be doing much better in school with some kind of PC and internet access at home. She says that she can't afford a computer. I tell her that for $200 I could piece all the parts together myself for a fully functional setup that would be sufficient for at least the next few years. I'd even build it with him so he could learn some extremely valuable information. I'd even front her half, but she'd have to pay me back. She says no way, still way out of her budget. Mind you, while we're having this conversation, she's barely looking up to speak to me, too busy scrolling through the gram on her phone. I say, screw it, I'll do it myself. Scrap together all the parts I can for free. I only had to buy an HDD. The setup was really out of date, but still worked. Gave it to them, kid was thrilled. About a month later, I noticed he's trying to finish all of his homework at the program again. I ask his mom if everything was okay with the computer. She says it broke down. I say, okay, what happened? I'll pick it up and try to fix it. She says she had to throw it away. I pull the kid aside and ask him. He tells me she sold it to her cousin for $50. I really don't like calling people trashy when they're apparently stuck in a culture of poverty. Maybe she needed that $50 for the light bill or groceries. But at the same time, time, she spends 3 times that amount on her cell phone each month, so it really just broke my heart. It was like she's doing everything in her power to ensure the kid has no frickin' chance at a decent life. I work in a school in one of the most socially deprived areas of the UK. At Parents' Evening, we give every parent a printout of their child's grades in each subject alongside their target grades. Last year, we had a parent of an 11-year-old respond to this printout by shouting, "What the F am I going to do with this? I can't effing read, can I?" This was in front of the other children, parents, and her child's teacher. After only 1 year in this school, there's actually a pretty long list of things I've seen parents do, or have heard other staff members claim to have seen parents do. Since a few people have asked, the school is in the Midlands. I don't want to be any more specific, just in case anyone figures out which school it is. People seem to be torn on seeing this as just trashy or more as sad, as if I might be picking on her a bit. Just to be clear, I'm not making fun of her. A quick laugh behind closed doors at things like this seems to give a bit of levity for a teacher in schools like mine. It can be tough, but I think the majority of people who work in these areas do it because they want to help conquer some of the social inequalities or issues that people are facing, whether that's for pure humanistic beliefs, their own ego, or just because it feels like you're accomplishing something. Maybe a bit of each. Regardless, I feel sympathy for the woman in question and her daughter. One of the aims of my job is to help prevent people reaching adulthood without the necessary skills to thrive. Her behavior doesn't change that. That doesn't make me assume I'm a higher class of person than she is, just dealt a different hand, I guess. At the mention of the Midlands, I just had to read it, and now I have to think about what school it could possibly be. Also, what a stupid thing to get angry about. No one can tell if you can read or not. Like, that's up to you to tell people. I called a parent about a behavioral issue. I must have been on speakerphone because I heard the kid come home. Parents start screaming at and wailing on the kid, cussing, calling them all sorts of names. I don't even know if the parents remembered I was on the phone. I hung up the phone and went to my principal. Teachers are mandated reporters. Don't hit your kids in front of a teacher. That should remind me, I had a really great school when I was a kid. The headmaster actually drove me to school on some days and even organized other teachers to drive me to and from school occasionally at the height of personal family issues as a kid. Teachers can seriously have the most positive effect on kids with bad home lives. Oh my god, I've worked in behavior units and juvies for a few years now, so you can imagine the families we get. 1. Took the kid out on the last day of term, pull into the driveway, and one of the kid's mothers is standing there, can of Monster in one hand, cigarette in the other, and wearing a miniskirt and knee-high boots in the middle of winter. 2. One grandparent used to come in wearing a dirty singlet with his belly hanging out and would try to kiss me and called me love, darling, and babe. 3. A kid left grounds without permission, so didn't have his phone, etc., which we confiscate. Mom came to pick it up, and when the principal tried to engage her in a conversation about her son's behavior, she attacked him with her handbag. I have 2. There is a parent who would walk through our closed campus every single day. As teachers, we are supposed to stop her because it's closed campus. Every single day, she would pretend she didn't know the rules. We always knew it was the same parent because she let her younger children, who weren't in school yet, ride around on their scooters ahead of her. One day, she was walking through with a stroller. She was not paying attention, and her freaking baby started falling out from the front of the stroller. I saw 4 teachers jump up to help the kid, and the mom didn't even acknowledge. The other one happened directly to me during parent-teacher conferences. I was meeting with a mom and her live-in boyfriend about her son. At the end of the conference, I asked if they had any questions I could answer for them, and he started asking me personal questions and flirting with me. I deflected and told them I had more conferences, but other teachers have told me that parents have hit on them before, so it's probably pretty common. Not a teacher, but a college administrator. Parents will call in very frequently when there is an issue with their student's living situation. If they're a butthole, frequent, I quote FERPA to them. Best example, I had to bill a student for around $600 in damage to their room at the end of the year. Mom called really angry about this because they had tried to repair the damages. Poorly, I should add. She ended up yelling about this over the phone, and I reminded her that her son was 22 years old and that I could only talk with him about this. Kid calls me back the next day and apologizes for his mom being such a B-word to me and asks if I could just lie to his mom when she calls back. It's a weird line of work. Not a teacher, but my dad once worked as a groundskeeper at a primary school. Worst thing he ever saw was a guy dropping his daughter off to school, and before she went through the gate, her dad went through her school bag and took out all of her packed food and and left eating it, essentially leaving her with nothing to eat that day. Dad was so angry he said he wanted to knock the guy out right there and then for leaving his child with no food for the day, but he ended up going straight to the principal to tell them what he witnessed so it could be investigated properly and get the kid help. My kid went to the preschool run by the public school system. One day, I saw one of his classmates. Every student was either 3 or 4. Moms opened the front passenger door, and they drove off with the radio cranked and the little girl dancing on the seat, leaning against the dashboard. The back seat was totally empty, not even a car seat. The next day, I offered the lady my other kid's seat. I'd buy another one on the way home. She told me to F off and drove away with her daughter again, standing out in the front seat. I let the principal know, and we watched the car drive into the traffic towards the highway. Day 3. I've called the police, but they'll only come if I call during the pickup. Great, that'll only take 30 minutes for them to arrive after Mom drives off with the daughter dancing on the seat again. I tell the principal I'm reporting the mom to family services if she won't intervene. On day 4, a guy shows up in her car and comes nose to nose with me. Without even so much as an introduction, he says if I keep harassing his woman, I'll regret it. I tell the principal, nothing she can do. They stop bringing the kid to school after that. Parent witness to an event, not a teacher. My kid's very first day of school. She's 4.5. In the gym hall, all the kids and parents are in line according to class, and one by one the teachers come and take them away. Our group was last to go. As we're waiting, a guy storms in, clearly drunk, starts shouting at a woman in the line, "Why the F didn't you tell me it was now? I've been looking everywhere," etc., etc. He slaps the mom. Another dad in the line pulls drunk dad away and pushes him. He falls down on top of another kid. That kid's mom screams, drunk starts to run out, squished kid's dad chases him. He made it out of the gym but then got caught and the crap kicked out of him in the school reception. Everyone is freaked out. Kids are crying, then the very happy teacher who is completely unaware comes in. I start Googling prices for private school. That doesn't sound like a single person involved responded the way that they really should have, although I do think the guy deserved a bit of a smack around the chops. Not a teacher anymore, but a registered nurse. Kid wakes up from dental surgery, a 4-year-old who needed a root canal. Several extractions and fillings, horrible dentition. Mom and dad nowhere to be found post-op. Eventually, they wander into the recovery room from the parking lot, reeking of cigarettes and the devil's lettuce. Proceed to give the 4-year-old a baby bottle of Mountain Dew. The pediatric dentist took the parents aside into a consult room to yell at them and lecture them. They told him to mind his own effing business, scooped up the kid and walked out. Saddest part was, I remember the poor kiddo had filthy feet and hair, also reeked of cigarettes. He looked so defeated already. All I could think was that this kid has an uphill battle for a decent life. Being a registered nurse is heartbreaking, not always for the reasons you'd expect. Not a teacher, but my mom is. She teaches the visually impaired. There are these 2 students of hers whose parents, mainly the mom, tell them that they can't do anything and won't be able to do anything, and all they do while at home is sit around because their mom makes them. However, my mom has been teaching them for about 4 years, trying to get them to believe in themselves. It mostly has worked, but recently a different teacher told them that they can't do anything as well, so that has been a huge setback for them. I just think that it's really trashy for a parent who tells their kid that they can't do anything, even though they can do many things that other people can. Or maybe it's a foreign concept to some people, but overcoming adversity, making the most of the hand you've been dealt, it's important to people's confidence, and this mother clearly does not do much for her son's confidence. Last year, I taught 5th grade. I had a student for 1 block a day that was a little mentally unstable. She developed a crush on another girl and began writing her a ton of creepy notes. The school was handling it, but apparently the second girl's mother didn't think that was enough, so they drove to the first girl's bus stop in the morning and started yelling and threatening her. They basically had her cornered when the bus driver showed up and had to pry this raging mom away from the student. The mom definitely shouldn't have reacted that way, but I gotta ask, how creepy were these notes? I used to work in a daycare, and on my first day in a new room with 15 to 24-month-olds, I picked up a little boy and noticed he had dropped something through the neck hole in his onesie. I pulled it out, and it was a lighter. When we returned it to the mom and told her where we found it, she laughed and said, "The kid gets his hands on everything." Poor kid also sounded like a smoker every time he laughed or coughed. End of day, parents were pulling up to the building to pick up their kids. 2 moms got into a physical fight in the parking lot when one of them pulled a baseball bat out of the trunk of her car. The families both jumped in and it was an all-out brawl. Went on a trip to America for the performing arts. Parent met their kids at the end of the trip for the last 2 days. Parent went out and got hammered both nights and would sneak into her student room, utterly off their face, and wake all the kids up to try and party. Tagged along to our final tour dinner with all the kids and got hammered again. Worst person ever. That sounds like a parent going through a midlife crisis and trying to relive the days of their youth because they're surrounded by younger people, maybe. And it's sad. Was in a parent-teacher conference as a middle school teacher. The kid starts talking about college. The parent looks at this kid and says, "You're not going to college. You're not smart enough." Like, WTF, how could you stifle your children that way? What a piece of crap. Not a teacher, but definitely saw it happen. Dude talks trash about this girl's cousin. Yes, cousin, of all things. There are tight groups of friends, and her friends were not happy and confronted him. Next day, his mom has the audacity to come over and threatens the entire staff and students with some special injection that will make them mentally impaired. As if she showing up to defend her son, who is to blame, was not surprising enough, she goes on to throw an absolute tantrum of accusations and consequences. Our principal, who is a loudmouth retired general, just stood there dumbfounded. Lady coming in like Paptimus Scirocco from Zeta Gundam, being all like, "Yeah, well, you're gonna be pooing in nappies for the rest of your life when I'm done with you." Ah man, if anyone's out here looking for anime recommendations and likes mechas, give Gundam a shot. In fact, start with Gundam Thunderbolt. It is so sick, it will get you into the franchise probably. Not a teacher, but leader of a camp for children. We had a child, let's call him Bob, about 8 years old. After 3 days of camp and 11 more to come, we found out he already run out of clean socks. Well, we called his mother and she told us they are from far away and they can't drive there or send them. After about 10 minutes of talking, we came to the conclusion that we will wash his dirty socks and she will bring new ones on the visiting day. Visiting day is in the middle of the camp, and as it came, his mother showed up. We were kind of surprised, because she sounded like she did not care over the phone. Visiting day ended and all the children were supposed to go to the forest to play games and forget about parents for the next 7 days. That is when Bob told us his mother took all of his socks, even those he had on his feet. We called Bob's mother again, and she just said it is our problem, so take care of it, and hung up. I called my mother and asked if she had any socks left from when I was young. She luckily had, and drove them to us. Bob left with 10 new pairs of socks and never came to our camp again. That essentially sounds like the mother was taking out the inconvenience that basically came of their lack of preparedness on the child by taking away all the socks, which is really screwed up behavior. Some people, again, just don't deserve to be parents. That might sound kind of extreme, but this lady just sounds vindictive and generally spiteful. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.